The following is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
構成藤田 Listening Keeping Strong Style.
Yo, this is Rich Latter from One Nation Radio. This is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network. We present to you the Ace of Podcasts, Keepin It Strong Style. Let's go. It's the Ace of Podcasts, Keepin It Strong Style. Covering New Japan, they ready to hold it down. Jeremy, Donovan, and the young boy Josh. Come and hit a job out and bury all the frauds. From the Tokyo Dome over to the G1. Social Suplex is the network where we can get it done. I'ma chill and let them have it, cause this is just an intro. Keeping the strong style, 6 stars from the get-go, boy. Yeah, from Tampa Bay to the Tokyo Dome, this is Keeping It Strong Style with your hosts, Jeremy Donovan and the young boy Joshua Smith. And thank you for listening.
Welcome to Keeping It Strong Style, the Ace of Podcast on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. Jeremy Donovan here with the young boy Josh Smith. On today's show, we'll review the first 2 nights of G1 Climax 34 and cover all latest news in the world of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Please support our show by subscribing and following the Social Suplex Podcast Network or Keeping It Strong Style on the podcast app of your choice and leaving a rating and review. You also get the network's podcast over at socialsuplex.com. Check out our Pro Wrestling Tees store, ProWrestlingTees.com/Social Suplex. That's where you can get your official Keeping It Strong Style t-shirt. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider making a one-time or monthly donation by visiting socialsuplex.com/donate and click on the donate button under the Keeping It Strong Style logo. And we are streaming live right now on patreon.com/KI Strong Style for IWGP subscribers. If you want access to the weekly live stream, ad-free audio, and bonus content, subscribe at patreon.com/KI Strong Style. And shout out to Wit89 from the Discord, who just jumped up to the IWGP level this past weekend. So getting in on the live stream. Rambones is in the chat right now. What's up, Rambones? So get on the Patreon. Sorry there hasn't been any bonus audio last week. Things have been kind of crazy here, but my schedule should be good this week. I should be able to get out Dominion Deep Dive episode 4. I have the rundown all laid out. I just need to
you're letting the people down, Jeremy, because they know I'm not going to do bonus audio, so they're depending on you for this.
Yeah, they'll definitely be Dominion Deep Dive this week. The layout's been done. I've already watched the match. I just haven't had time to sit down and record it. So that should be out this week. And there's like 5 G1 shows this week, so I might do a Donovan.
There's 5 this week.
Yeah.
I hope I can watch all of them.
So I might do a digest on some of that stuff as well. But yeah,
when we first started, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
I was just gonna say, G1 season, let's get it, boys. Yeah. Hey, good morning from the UK. I'm in the full screen mode, so I can't see the comments unless you share them, Jeremy. So I'm gonna leave that up to you tonight.
All right.
I was gonna say, what was I gonna say? Oh man, I forgot. It doesn't matter, I guess.
Something about G1 being busy.
Man, I remember. So when we first started doing the Patreon, I was like, yo, there's gonna be so many people that sign up. It's just gonna be ridiculous for us to like announce them all. But like now I'm like, you know what? Maybe we could list off who the people who are on what tiers and give them the credit. People like that. Like that might be an added benefit.
Yeah,
but we do appreciate you guys for being on the tiers and supporting the show, and we do want to give you guys awesome content, and thank you guys for being here right now listening. Yeah
Well, it's G1 Climax season, the greatest season of the year for a New Japan fan. We had tournament kicking off.
Climax of the season too.
We had 2 nights this weekend, but I guess before we jump into the nights, and I didn't put it on the rundown, there was a press conference. I believe it was Thursday of last week. Did you watch any of the press conference?
I didn't watch any of it, man. I really wanted to, but it's been busy. I was like surprised I was able to get through the 2 nights of the G1. I did watch them, but I did see some stuff. I saw that there's a very heated exchange between Shota Umino and Gabe Kidd. I wonder what that's about. Not sure. But I didn't even really get the cliff notes. Like I was actually hoping today, climaxing for a month straight. Yeah, that's funny. I don't know, man. I was hoping to watch it today, and I just didn't get enough time to watch it. So yeah, I mean, maybe did you see it?
I did not. I just saw.
So why are you bringing it up? I didn't think I was gonna have to watch it because you didn't put it on the rundown.
Well, I figured. I know usually you watch a lot of the interview stuff, so I didn't know if you saw any of it.
I tried to.
But I mean, I saw like a lot of the highlights and clips. I saw the Gabe Kidd Umino thing. I saw Suji being mad that Finlay wouldn't eat the Marlowe pudding, and I saw all the outfits. Did you think, somebody asked us last week who was going to have the best drip? Do you think anybody stand out? Great.
I didn't even see the pictures.
Oh wow.
Yeah, bro. Like I jumped into the G1. I just raw dogged the G1 this year. That's what I did.
Oh man. Did you? The one thing I think was missing though was the lawn picture. I didn't see. I saw a stage picture. I didn't see a lawn picture.
Again, raw dogged the G1. So Rambone saying Gabe Kidd's the undisputed champion for performance at the presser. I think that kind of depends on. There are some people that he irks them and gets under their skin, and they just find it extremely cringe, and they're not having it with the Gabe Kidd. But I'm not one of those. I think he's awesome. And
yeah, I think Gabe Kidd rocks. I know there's a lot of people that are turned off by him and think he's too edgy, he's too Conor McGregor. But I'm like, man, Conor McGregor was like one of the biggest stars for UFC and biggest draw. If he can channel that energy minus all the outside shenanigans, like.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's good.
Without the rapes.
Exactly. But yeah. So, yeah, press conference happened. But let's jump into the action here. So, G1 Climax 34, opening night, July 20th. We were in the Edion Arena, Osaka, with an attendance of 4,177. I know this was up compared to Sapporo from night one of last year, and I think also up from when they did Osaka last year as well. So numbers
outdrawing Dynamite.
What's that?
Outdrawing Dynamite.
Oh man, definitely outdrawing Collision. Oh man, so pretty good attendance here, and overall good attendance for the weekend. So we had 2 full block nights here. So night one, show opened up. We had big Oleg Boltin, boss, the Snow Leopard, defeating sold out Ren Narita in 7 minutes and 37 seconds.
I really enjoyed this match. I love the presentation. Oleg Boltin coming out and we speculated on it. I think a lot of people, it's been a long time coming. You've heard the dissenting voices of irate New Japan diehards. What's the deal? Is this guy really graduated? He's getting titles, but he's still running, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, just have a little patience. It's coming. Well, here it was, new music, new gear, rocking out, basically like representing the Kazakhstan colors and having the Kazakhstan like sheep herders hat and everything like that, and just coming out looking awesome. And then, I thought he had a good little match here with Ren Narita, t-shirt Ren Narita, mind you. And it really was a body part match. So in some ways, this match reminded me like a prototypical, like not early, but like midway through his like US title period Goldberg match, where like, Goldberg had already run through everybody in like a minute or two. So they needed to give him like some opponents later on where it was like, you wanted to see him work a little bit before he destroyed them. And so he'd usually get a little bit of opposition. And that's kind of what this was like he was using his power, using his speed, dominating Ren Narita. Ren Narita took him to the outside. As we all know, young lions are not adept at fighting on the outside. That's a skill set you have to develop over time. And why would they know how to do that? I mean, who trains you in wrestling school to eat a post or to bump into a barrier? And he attacked, I believe, what was it? The arm he attacked?
Yeah, so Narita was focusing on the arm throughout the match. And then on the outside, he grabbed the arm around the guardrail, put the attack on there. So, yeah, he spent a lot of time working on the arm towards the beginning to stop, Bowleg from doing the side-to-side gut wrench, to stop him from doing the verdict and the kamikaze.
Yeah, it was a good strategy. Reminded me a lot of like Kanemaru, the way that he kind of deals with power wrestlers in his tournament matches, and kind of gave a bit of a like a learning opposition, something that Oleg kind of had to overcome. But ultimately, it came down to the speed and power and prowess of Oleg Boltin overcoming the cunning and wiles of Ren Narita, and he was able to recover, power out of his shit, and beat him. And a lot of people thought that him and Callum Newman were here to do goose egg type of performances in the tournament, and like maybe they will be in the lower rung, but on this night they made an emphatic statement, like in the first match of the tournament.
Yeah, and I thought this was the perfect layout for Oleg to work. A very simple body part match, muscle guy versus a more kind of smaller, kind of quick-witted guy. And so I thought the formula they laid out was great for somebody of Oleg's stature and trying to learn. And yeah, Narita really worked that arm, the cross arm breaker, towards the end there. He was hitting his guillotine knees, and then but Big Oleg was able to power out the cross arm breaker. He hit the judgment, and then he followed up with the kamikaze. 1, 2, 3. He gets 2 points on the board. Red Narita with 0, and off to a hot start for the Kazakhstan Snow Leopard boss, Boltin Oleg.
Yeah, very impressive. And this is the kind of thing that we've talked about where, I'll admit I had some misgivings about how Oleg Boltin would perform in this tournament, and that still remains to be seen. But last year, a lot of these young guys, they were all put in the same block, and we had visions of grandeur, thinking that there was going to be this like generational rivalry sort of established throughout it, and that didn't really pan out. And I don't think that it was kind of a disservice to those guys, because they ended up not being able to get the growth and experience that one would usually, obtain in a G1. And already just 2 nights in, you're already starting to see these guys. There's so many first-time matches, just like they keep mentioning on the commentary, and they're fighting veterans. And granted, Ren Narita isn't quite like a quote-unquote veteran, but he's been wrestling and in the game a lot longer than Oleg Boltin up to this point. And this was a learning experience for him, and this is how he's going to get that one-on-one time that's necessary to become a meaningful star. And like, one reason why the G1 is so important is because you can be awesome all year long. You can do, have great tag matches and the occasional singles match, but like the strength of your character throughout the year is really predicated on how did you do in the G1. That's like that's the main storyline that matters the most for people's years, more so than almost anything else the whole year.
Yeah, and that's, like for our awards, like we don't really have serious discussions about nominees until after the G1's over, because a lot of people see their trajectory, their kind of story for the rest of the year. You can kind of tell where people are going based from this G1. And we had a question here from Discord Daddy. He says, Boltin Oleg's new gear is gorgeous. He looks like a god. Have you been impressed with his performance so far? How about his post-match promos?
I haven't listened to any of the promos. I've heard a couple rumblings about some stuff going on backstage, but I'm not that up to speed with what people are saying. So I can't really speak to that, but yeah, he looked awesome. And I don't know if this is going to be his final form or if like we're in the second stage of his evolution, but
Super Saiyan 2.
Yeah, like that, or maybe like when Frieza got big, maybe like that. I don't know. But
Frieza on the gas.
Yeah, he's pretty awesome though.
Yeah. So let's move on to the first match from the A block. We had the Prince of Pace, Callum Newman, defeating the Roughneck Shota Umino in 9 minutes and 46 seconds.
We called it.
Yeah.
We said last week that there is a chance that this might happen. I just want to say I didn't participate in this year's Sport of Pro Wrestling Pick'em tournament because I don't like to lose, and I usually do pretty bad in those. But I noticed that like within the top 10, top 15, it's a lot of people that listen to this show and send in questions and that are like faithful listeners. And I don't think that that's any sort of coincidence, because a lot of the things that we said, now we weren't perfect, but a lot of the things we said were going to happen last week did occur on these first two nights. So I feel like, maybe that just speaks to the level of knowledge that we might, and insight that we might have into the product. And yeah, Callum Newman again comes out, new gear. Was that new music? I don't know his music.
No, that's the music he's been using.
I thought so. Okay. But, kind of almost like an Osprey-esque sort of look. He came out bearing the flag, and just within a moment, he looked more like the leader of the United Empire than TJP has been the last 4 months. And had a very, very good, very spirited match with Shota Umino. There's been a lot of questions about Umino's health and his condition coming into the match and into the tournament in general. And that played itself out. We saw him having difficulties with his, speed, his movement, his timing, his power, everything. Like he really was doing a good job subtly selling the injuries, and those missteps and misgivings tended to be what caused him to lose this match, where Callum Newman, was able to execute his game plan, hit the big moves at the end, and he hit him with the Oz cutter and the 1, 2, 3 here. And this was a good match, but I feel like this was the perfect opening night G1 style surprise result where you're like, oh shit, like anything can happen here, and it kind of gets Callum Newman off to the best start he could hope for.
Yeah. G1 night one, what we said it before, there's always going to be upsets. There's going to be statement wins. And so, so we got here with the first two matches, and you're here with Callum, like you mentioned, coming out with the the Will Ospreay type gear, looking really good. I like the gear change there. And story of the match was Newman living up to that Prince of Pace nickname, and also too you had two guys here that are very connected to Will Ospreay. Obviously Newman being Ospreay's protege, even back to like their time in the UK, and then Shota Umino, a guy that's been tried to beat Will Ospreay several times. They had this very long rivalry with Will Ospreay. So kind of two guys that are very connected to Will. So, but beginning of the match, Newman was really picking up the pace, running the ropes fast, and Umino, I think, in kayfabe and a little bit in reality, had a little bit of a hard time keeping up with Callum Newman. There were some spots throughout the match where it seemed like Newman was just a hair ahead of Umino. And Umino was not keeping up, and I don't know if that was Umino trying to sell or just really like he couldn't keep up with Newman. And I know there's a lot of people who are like criticizing Umino's condition as well, not in as great a shape as he was previously, and people just really kind of down on Umino right now on the look and just what everything's going on for him right now.
Well, along with me being too busy to watch, the ancillary aspects of New Japan, I've been a little too busy to listen to other shows that cover New Japan. But I did see a tweet from Stiff Josh over at We Work Stiff, and they were saying something to the effect of that there's a story that is playing out, and those guys tend to kind of dig into the clues and try to be ahead when it comes to that sort of stuff. And they I guess they've had their own speculation about what the trajectory of Shota Umino would be in dealing with these injuries throughout the tournament. And I wish I could speak to it more than that, because I haven't listened to their show, so I don't have the full scope of what they're saying, but they tend to believe that this is, almost like a shoot becoming a work, where they're utilizing real life, ongoings and making it part of the booking. I do think that there are aspects to the whole thing with Shota Umino, even going back before the injury and going back to, a couple years ago when he first broke in and returned from excursion. Everyone was like, well, he needs to find himself and everything. And there's truth to that. But like, I found him almost more palatable when he was doing a Tanahashi cosplay than I do now when I don't really know what he is at this point in time, and it's almost less defined and more nebulous than it had been prior.
Yeah, Rambo saying Gato style, early tragedy, giving Shoto something to overcome. But yeah, I agree with you. I know a lot of people were down on the Tana cosplay. He looked like too much like Tanahashi or too much like Naito, but I thought he looked like a traditional like New Japan star. Like,
yeah, me too.
You can say Tanahashi's cosplay of other guys, but if you look back through the history of like top Japanese stars, like that hair, the body, the tights, he looked like a top ace Japanese wrestler, and then cut the hair, bleached the hair, switched up the gear, and I just don't think it was a good look. Like you said, like now it's like, all right, what exactly is he? And I guess part of it, he's trying to find himself, but I would have preferred he just looked like the ace and you push him like the ace versus him saying he's the ace and then not looking like the ace and then still trying to find himself. It's just, I don't think it's the best right now.
And see, I'm not on the bandwagon saying like, oh, he's cooked, he's washed, he's done. I think it's a little too early for that. And Rambone is saying in the comments, he's 100% on board with him. That's his guy. I could see why a lot of people feel that way. I think on this show, we've been pretty clear almost the whole time that do we think that they're going to push him as the guy? Yeah, I think he's going to get that opportunity. I think he's going to get that push. Do I think he could potentially even fill those shoes? We've seen glimpses of it. The one shining example was the most recent match that he had with Will Ospreay, where it was like, oh shit, like he might be the guy. And there've been times where it appears that way, and then other times where like it seems to kind of wear off, and I'm wondering where that guy is. Whereas like when I watch Tsuji, I never feel that way. I always feel like he's a fucking man. And that's pretty much my standpoint on it. And I think it's hard to judge a guy on one match coming off of an injury where they very much were playing into said injury as part of the storyline of the match to, pronounce him cooked or whatever. I don't think that that's the case, but I've also never been 100% sure that he is the future of the generation either. Like I've always thought that he was going to get that opportunity and potentially could be the guy, but I've always been more bullish on Tsuji personally.
Yeah, I think even as young Lions, I think we were even a little bit higher on Tsuji sometimes. And yeah, since Tsuji's come back, I mean, from day one, from that Dominion match with Sonata, he kind of showed me like he has all the tools and he's gotten better since then. And he also had a great Will Ospreay match as well. And, the Goto New Japan Cup final match. I think Tsuji is really the full package. And I think he's definitely a guy that could be the true ace. And then also you look over in Noah, you got Oiwa, who is looking jacked every time I see him. Like the look, his look is great, and like when he comes back from N1 victory, I'm like, dude, I have a feeling like he's gonna go, really be hitting the ground running.
Yeah, I mean, out of the most recent few generations of young Lions that went off and came back from excursion, the three that I always thought had the most prototypical New Japan star look were Uemura, Shooter, and Oiwa. And I've always kind of wondered if it was going to be one of those three guys that's like the ace. But as of now, we don't know because there's too many questions kind of up in the air for all three of them. So we'll see how that plays out. But, it's classic Japanese professional wrestling booking. A guy is injured. He comes back. He's not 100%. He eats his first loss. That's like typical professional wrestling booking in Japan. So I'm not surprised by this outcome. Plus, it's the first night of the G1. Anybody can beat anybody, and that doesn't really prove or mean anything. It's a big win for Callum Newman. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's like what Rambone said. It could be, them giving him a little bit of a losing streak, but we'll talk about night two. I don't know if I think that that's even the case, really.
Yeah, and finish of the match, Callum hits a Spanish fly, targeting, landing right on the injured hip, and then he hits the Oz Cutter 1-2-3, gets a big win. We had two questions here. Def Triangle 720 says, how do you feel about Bolton and Callum's new presentations? And what 89 said, do you think Callum Newman's look is too Will Ospreay?
I do think it's a little bit too Will Ospreay, but they have kind of said that he's the guy that's carrying the mantle for Will Ospreay. So I'm okay with it for now because it's something that's sort of built upon what he was prior to this. I again, same thing. I'm wondering with old Bolton if this is like his final form. I don't know that it is, but I think that these are really good, you know, um, sort of launching pads for both guys in this iteration of the tournament.
Yeah, Rainbow saying we got Will Ospreay at home energy. I don't think this will probably end up being Callum's final form either, and I think right now the look kind of fits the story. Like he is Will Ospreay's protege. He's in United Empire. Like Will's trained him to kind of be the next guy up, and so I think it's a great story of like, all right, he's kind of evolving, but he's look up to his mentor. But I think eventually there's a launching pad to kind of become his own person and maybe do his more look. And at some point, I'm sure United Empire might disband. So I think there's room to grow. I'm cool with the will look for Callum for right now.
Well, you have to wonder and imagine if there's not money in a Callum Newman Will Ospreay match down the line. However, they can facilitate that. And I mean, that's just what I'm thinking right off the bat, seeing how they're, kind of having him do a bit of a cosplay. I don't think it would be a bad idea for him to start adding his own creative elements to expand on the presentation to kind of make it his own and differentiate himself as time goes on. But, this is a great way to, like, when you're doing video packages, 2 years from now or whatever the case may be, very similar to what they did. I don't know if you remember, like WrestleMania, I believe it was 19, when they showed all the clips of Chris Jericho having been like an HBK prototype. Something very similar happened back in the day when everyone called Naito a cosplay Tanahashi, and that there was truth to that. The Stardust Genius was kind of like an emulation of what Tanahashi had been as the ace. So these things happen, and they are the building blocks of great rivalries and stories to be told. So we'll see.
Yeah, and for Bolton's look, I love it. It's a little bit kind of, I was joking last week, he should kind of the Zangief kind of wrestler look, and in a way it's kind of like, the Kazakhstan version of that. So I think it's dope, and yeah, I think his look is great. So moving on to the third match of the evening from the B block, we had the never openweight champion Hanare defeating El Phantasmo 9 minutes and 26 seconds.
Yeah, so we got a lot of feedback last week from people about the discourse that we had about El Phantasmo. And it is interesting because there is such a, I guess at this point in time, a perspective on what El Phantasmo is and where he fits into the trajectory of New Japan. And a lot of people see him as like and these are not my words, but this is just kind of the vibe I'm getting from people that listen to this show, is like they see him as an aging, undersized, failed junior in the heavyweight divisions with, not much upside in the long term. But, one thing we didn't get to say last week, but I think is worth noting is ELP did really well in the G1 standings the last 2 years, and almost was a block finalist both times. Even if he was like just kind of edging it, he was almost a block finalist both years in a row. And that's kind of one of the main reasons why I kind of felt like we sort of were speculating about his prospects within the block. I thought this match with Hanare was really awesome. And it's one thing kind of reading off the names on paper when you're just like, all right, we're gonna get this match. But then when it's happening and you're like, oh shit, I really like El Phantasmo and I like the new iteration of Hanare, and like this is a cool ass match, and it starts happening and they're like going out there and like, say what you will about ELP at this point in time, and there's a lot of speculation about his standing in the company. Apparently he's freelance right now and he's not signed to a deal, and people are wondering if he's on his way out. Maybe he is, maybe he's not, I don't know. But he's doing his damnedest to put in great performances in this tournament already. And they're telling a story where he has pretty much, like we talked about last week, been abandoned by all of GOD. And it's really just him out there with Jado at this point, kind of a man who's an island unto himself, and he's very unsure and hesitant about pulling the trigger, and that's what ended up costing him the match in the long run. They had him and Hinari had I thought a fucking awesome match, and for a sub 10-minute match, this really rocked. And he was going to hit the sudden death. He paused for just a second, and it was his undoing, and Hinari ended up blasting him and getting the 1-2-3. And ELP is sort of trying to find himself, and you have to wonder if this tournament is going to be his exodus of the company, like this is his way out and they're going to bury him on the way out, or is this a story that is playing out to build him up? And I'm betting on the latter. And again, the fact that he's facing David Finlay on the final night, I think we clued in on something that other folks just aren't cluing in on. And the last thing I'll say about before I kick it off to you, Jeremy, a lot of folks talk about the downsides when it comes to ELP, but the one thing that they seem to forget is like, this is a company that has struggled in the past few years maintaining the foreign stars that they've built up. And here's a guy that has been built up for a long time and has all the talent in the world. And not that he couldn't fit into an AEW or a WWE, because he has the talent, but I don't know if they've got the space for him right now. And whether I think he'd get lost in the shuffle in either of those two companies, but they have the potential right now to make a star out of him. And I understand that there are folks who are like, well, the whole purpose of the company right now is to push the young guys. The young guys can't get to the mountaintop unless they got guys like ELP and Zack Sabre Juniors and people like that to go against and to have those generational rivalries. They need someone to bridge the gap. And I think that's what we're seeing here with ELP. And I know I've talked about him a lot. Hinari was awesome in this match too, and he's coming on strong, being a champion in this tournament. And I feel like they're adding a bit more prestige to the Never title, making him look strong in the tournament as well. This was awesome.
Yeah, I was very surprised by the amount of ELP slander in our Discord and people, being really down on ELP and some of the points that we were making last week with Chris. And like you mentioned, people saying, oh, he's this aging guy. And I'm like, dude, this guy is 8 years younger than Goto. And I don't hear anybody complaining about Hiroki Goto being in this tournament and being washed and being old. It's like, this guy is like in his late 30s. He's still super athletic in this match. He's still busting out line salts and doing the big dive and the UFO cutter. Like, he's still super athletic. Is late 30s, and I still think there is like an upside with him. Clearly, should he be pushed more than a Suji or Umino or Oiwa, these guys that you want to get over and be the longer faces? Maybe not, but I don't think that means you just make him a jobber and he never gets pushed. I think he's a very talented guy, great talker, great wrestler, and I do think that this is a story. He's coming out, he's doing the broken heart, and on commentary they're talking about we last saw Hikuleo in Dominion, we don't know where he is, and all this stuff, and of course making jokes about him being the tallest Tonga and all this stuff. And so I think it's a story. I think it's going to play out, and it's this kind of thing of finding himself. And we saw a little bit in these matches where he starts kind of down, but then like Hinari's like, show me your fighting spirit. It's kind of a similar story that they did with Sonata with Taichi, where like that one match with Taichi's like, come on, man, like show me what you're made of. And so I think that we're going to see a thing here with ELP where every night his opponents are going to be like kind of challenging him. And again, on commentary, making the point, they're like, there's a lot of wrestlers who really wanted to be in the G1, and they're kind of pissed when they see Phantasmo with this, sad face and seem like he doesn't want to be there. And so, I think everything is just a whole big story, and he's gonna kind of find that moment. He might, end up going, losing the first three and then kind of making that comeback. And like we mentioned, I do think that last match with Finlay is going to be very important. He might not advance the semifinals from it, but I think he's definitely going to win. He's going to get himself a global title match from that, and I think that's a good spot for him to be in that white belt picture.
Yeah, when you talk about athleticism, granted, when I wasn't the biggest fan of ELP when he first started with the company, and it was never due to his athleticism, that what he's able to do with his body control and his agility and balance is really incredible. For me, it was always just some of the choices he made from match layout and some of the basics. I felt like he was lacking in that, but he's clearly closed that gap over the years as he's worked more and more in Japan and grown as a performer to the point where like he's, and people back then said I was crazy, but I would say go back and watch some of those early ELP matches and you'll see a guy who's really athletic, but is not the same performer that he is today, just being completely honest. But he's become such a well-rounded guy to this point to where I'm like, who else in the company can do what he does?
Yeah.
Jeremy, like, I'm not saying that rhetorically. Tell me, who do you think could do the stuff athletically now that there is no Will Ospreay in this company? Who is on his level that can do the same level of athleticism? Like, I don't know, maybe Robbie Eagles.
Yeah, and
he's gonna be a junior guy, probably.
Yeah,
right?
we don't see Robbie all the time, and maybe Callum can get there. I don't think we've fully seen what he can do, but
like in terms of the heavyweights, there's nobody that I can think of off the top of my head. Certainly nobody else in this tournament that has the same level of athleticism and style that he has. So there's clearly something there, and I do get it. Age is a number; it does play into things, but there's also timing to things. And when you've had a guy on your roster for this length of time and you've never pulled the trigger, you have the ability to kind of rewrite the story, let him quote unquote finish his story. and I didn't hear people complaining about this type of shit when Tama Tonga got, elevated to a top star after having been mid in the tag division for years and years and years on end. And I think there's way more upside with ELP. I mean, it was just a few short years ago. People got short memories. They were saying he was going to be the next Kenny Omega. And I'm like, you guys not remember that? Like, so, and this isn't in defense of us. I think we're just right. I think that we're going now, granted, I'm not saying like he's going to be IWGP champ. He's going to be one of the top 4. I don't know that that's the case. And I don't really doubt it, but me thinking that he can squeak into a number 3 spot in his block and beat David Finlay to earn a title shot, I don't think that those are unrealistic expectations, especially since he has a storyline that is playing out in front of our eyes, So
yeah,
I thought the match was good. I thought Hanare looked awesome. And, I'm very interested to see where they take ELP through this tournament.
Yeah, Hanare picks up the win with the Streets of Rage, starting off with a big win there. So we move on to the 4th match of the evening from the A block. Zack Sabre Jr. defeating Great-O-Khan in 11 minutes and 11 seconds.
I feel like, don't get me wrong, Zack is a great opponent for many people in New Japan, but I feel like he might be the best opponent for Great-O-Khan. They just always seem to gel stylistically with one another really, really, really well. And I don't know if it's just because of like the catch background of Okan that sort of like brings it out of him. But yeah, I thought this match was really fucking cool. Not only were the matches good on this night, but there was such a variety of styles of matches on display, which is, we've all been to those kind of like, I don't know, think back to like some of those takeovers where like they were all really long matches and really good, but they're all so epic. Or like you watch a mid 2008 like ROH and like third match in the show and like BJ Whitmer and somebody, I don't know, whoever, they're like having like a 30-minute like epic contest and you're like, damn, well, you still got like 8 matches on this show, and they're all doing the same style. And like that's not what you're getting on a G1 night like this. Like you're getting a variety of style of work. And then they went out into the crowd and they did some really awesome stuff too. I dug this. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, it seems like Great-O-Khan, he's kind of leaning into the whole, being the king of pro wrestling and wanting to kind of master the style of his opponents and kind of show his kind of wide range of wrestling skills. So we saw towards the beginning of the match, he was trying to keep up with Zack with the technical style wrestling and changing of holds. And then, they ended up on the outside to the floor, and then they're kind of doing some strike base kind of stuff, trying to grapple. Like, it's almost like a street fight, and in the middle of some alleyway, and like people are surrounded, like watching them fight, and so it kind of had that feel on the outside. And eventually they get back into the ring, and Sabre is able to hit the Zack driver to pin Great Okan. But yeah, really good matchup here. Like I mentioned, I do think Zack is a really good opponent here for Great Okan, and if this is what Okan's going to do for this G1, I'm pretty excited about it. Just kind of showcasing different styles and trying to wrestle his opponent's style and trying to show that he is the king of pro wrestling.
I think it's important for him to find a way to not just get over in a popularity sense, but get over from a perspective of people passionately reacting to his matches, sort of similar to like what Taichi was able to do through these G1s in years past. Like he's never been a guy, like Taichi was never a guy that made himself a credible threat in the tournaments from like a points perspective, but he got over based on his level of work. And that's always been the thing that's kind of held Okan back for whatever reason. It's always been, style over substance. It's all character work. And, in some ways, I hate to say this, I don't mean it in a negative way. So people would probably take it a negative way, but in some ways he reminds me of like New Japan's equivalent to like Bray Wyatt, a guy that like has all the talent in the world. People connect with him. They like the gimmick, but it's more gimmick than actual great work, Mm-hmm. And I think he's more than that, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen some really good Great Okan matches, and even as a young lion, the Oka days, like the foundation and the platform is there. But yeah, it does seem like with the Great Okan character, it has been more about the gimmick and, the claw and doing the rural revitalization and all this stuff, and kind of his outside of the ring shenanigans and
hose.
It's more about that than what can he actually do in the ring. But it seems like this G1 is going to be more focused on him trying to showcase his different styles and proving that he can do his opponent's style. So good stuff here. Then following that, from the B block, we had Jeff Cobb defeating Hiroki Goto in 7 minutes and 24 seconds.
Very short match. I can't complain too much because it wasn't overly long. I remember these two guys, the first time they ever locked up was one of those Long Beach shows years ago for, I think, the Never title. And I had some complaints. I've always kind of thought that these two guys underachieve in terms of their work. I know they've had a couple really good matches with one another, but I've always had higher expectations. This didn't quite live up to what I thought the match could be, but I can't really take too much away because it was sub 8 minutes and they worked hard and it was good. It wasn't like the hardest hitting or greatest match of the night, but it was good. And Jeff Cobb got a really good, win on the opening night. And the Goto apologists were extremely pleased with his performance here because they felt like he was the standout, and maybe he was.
Yeah, I thought Goto looked really good in this match. And yeah, like you said, man, this was a really good sub 8 minute match. Like I enjoyed this match a lot. It was very hard hitting. These guys going out here and slugging, both guys throwing big lariats. Eventually Goto was able to get Cobb down with a lariat, hit a bulldog for a near fall, did the GTR for a near fall, and he was able to escape toward the islands, got a roll up, and then moments later, Cobb was able to hit the tour of the islands, 1, 2, 3, get the win over Goto. So Cobb, NJPW World TV Champion, and a point they made that Cobb is trying to finish his matches in the TV time limit, the TV title time limit. We talked about that last week. Like,
oh, that's weird. It's almost like we might have said something like that on the show last week.
Yeah, we speculated. Yeah, Cobb might try to keep those matches.
And the difference is, Joel and Damon, there's no pastrami sandwiches here. This is all off rip.
But yeah, so keeping the time limit, that's going to be his goal.
Strong style.
Yeah, he's going to try and keep a strong style. He's going to try and keep the time limit under 15 minutes going forward. I think it's a cool story to have. Like, all right, yeah, you're this champion where your matches are sub 15 minutes.
What are you laughing about?
Hold on.
Okay, KISS, keeping it raw, dog. That's right.
Oh my gosh, Raymond.
You got to, because it takes away the feeling.
Oh, all right.
We're trying to restore the feeling.
Oh man.
Oh geez.
But yeah, so yeah, I think it's a cool kind of gimmick to have going forward for Cobb. You got to try and keep these matches under sub 15 minutes, and that's an easy way to set up contenders and challengers for him. So moving on to the next.
I bet you someone goes to a draw with him now.
Yeah, somebody could go to a draw, or you could have somebody that beats him, like I think Samson mentioned last week. Somebody beats him at like 16 or 17 minutes, and then Cobb be like, "Well, that doesn't count in my book because he didn't beat me under 15. So if he really wants to, beat me,
that was my idea.
Oh, was you? I thought it was Samson. But yeah,
I'm pretty sure. And if it wasn't, I'd take it. But I'm pretty sure it was.
But yeah, so there's definitely ways to build stories and challengers off of this.
Yeah, I like it.
So then following that, we had the debut of the smart bastard, Jake Lee, and he defeated Sonata in 4 minutes and 57 seconds.
I don't know if it was night 1 or night 2, but they were commentating Walker Stewart and Chris Charlton. Chris Charlton made a comment about his new nickname being the smart bastard. And Walker Stewart goes, "I heard that's what Kevin Kelly used to call you." And it just went dead ass silent. Like, I don't know if Chris put them both on mute and chastised him or what, but nobody sold it. Nobody laughed. Nothing happened. It just went dead ass silent. And bro, I burst out. Like I was taking a drink of something and I almost spit it out because I just love awkwardness. And I don't know if it was truly awkward, but to me, that's the way it came off. Cause he's like, "Yeah, I hear that's what Kevin Kelly used to call you."
Silence.
Totally silent.
Oh man.
Yeah, Jake Lee beat Sonata. Two guys that have a history with one another going back to the All Japan Pro Wrestling days, and whose careers in some ways parallel one another in a few different ways. And a match that a lot of people were saying was going to be maybe not the best and an interesting choice for the opening night of G1 contest. And yeah, they went sub 5 minutes. Jake Lee picks up the win. Part of me, what I'm doing in this G1 is trying to determine how I feel about Jake Lee as a non-initiated viewer, somebody that really doesn't know the guy. And I wouldn't say this match won me over. It didn't really do it much for me because honestly, it was Sonata getting almost everything in, and then Jake Lee hitting him with a big boot and getting the 1-2-3, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So far, I don't know. At first, I was, kind of like you, kind of the wait and see on Jake Lee. But the more I see of him, I'm starting to not really become a fan of him. And I know there seems to be this, groundswell for him. And there's a lot of people who don't like him, who do like him. A very polarizing guy, but definitely an interesting way to debut him here. Beating a former IWGP World Champion in less than 5 minutes. And like you mentioned, he really didn't do much here. He had a big choke slam for a near fall, 2 minutes and 30 second spot. And then, Sonata tried to come back for a little bit. He did the Magic Screw neck breaker, went for the moonsault, then the Shining Wizard, and he even got a O'Connor roll near fall. But then after that, Jake Lee just ran in, hit that. I think he calls it the face break or the break point, something like that. Eventually,
I thought he called it a hell of a kick.
That's Sami Zayn's. But yeah, same move, hell of a kick, and yeah, that was it. Beat him.
I mean, some positives: no monocle, no top hat.
Yeah, I'm not digging his tights though.
Oh, that's something I wanted to mention. Every single person in this year's G1, except for, I think, Goto, everybody has new gear, across the board. And I just have this feeling that there was a conversation in the backstage where Tanahashi's like, "I get fucking new gear every year. You guys don't always get new gear. You're not going to embarrass me out there. This is a new G1. buy some fucking gear. And like everybody got away, like did it. And Goto was like, I'm not, bro, I've been here a long time. Like I'm not going over. I'm not getting new gear. Like I'll put on the white gear if that's what you really want. That's about it.
Yes,
but yeah,
everybody, the Bishamon gear.
Yeah, he has the Bishamon. Everybody has new gear though, like across the board. Even Naito has new gear, which is like crazy.
Sonata didn't have new gear though. It was his
Oh, he was just wearing the orange joints, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yep. That tells you right there. and he was undefeated completely in last year's block action and world champion. And now he's losing to Jake Lee. Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
Had a few questions here. At Sif Gang or Die on Twitter says, has Jake Lee been working the bright lights gimmick way better than Carl Anderson this whole time?
I don't know what the gimmick is, and I don't know how he's working the gimmick better. I'm not sure. I don't get the question.
So Carl Anderson's whole thing, remember the bright lights, like he only turns it up when he's on the biggest stage. So I'm guessing maybe he
I thought the deal was he only showed up for the big shows and he didn't work the small shows. Did I misunderstand that gimmick?
I thought it was like he only like really tried on the big shows. Like you give me the bright lights and then I will actually like show out. Besides that, I'm just gonna steal money and just kind of show up and not do anything.
Agree to disagree. Yeah, maybe. Does Jake? I haven't seen Jake Lee work well under the bright lights yet, though, so I can't really say. You know.
Yeah.
But you know what? How about this? I know these days. Cage match isn't what it used to be. Don't get me wrong, it's not. But it is still a useful tool. Let's take a look at Jake Lee real quick and see what great matches he's had, what great singles matches he's had that don't involve Kento Miyahara. So I have pulled it up. His best singles matches against Kento Miyahara from 2019. He's got an 8.68 with Kano. He's got a really good Yuma Aoyagi match from May of 2022. His other two highly rated matches, all Kento Miyahara. He's got actually like 4 or 5 of his best matches in his top 10 are all Kento Miyahara matches. He also has a Marufuji match that's rated pretty well, but oh shit, bro. The further down you go, the more Kento, you just see Kento Miyahara like, bro, in his top 21 matches, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 singles matches with Kento Miyahara. And I know he didn't carry Kento Miyahara to those great matches.
Bro, that's like looking at somebody's cage match and seeing just like 9 like Will Ospreay, 9 Okada, 9 Kenny Omega. It's like, yeah, you're
but like look at the people he's working with that he's had great matches with: Takashi Sagura, Shuji Ishikawa, Suwama, and the names I listed earlier. Like those are all great wrestlers that I know can fucking go. But I'm not as confident. I'm bearish on Jake Lee right now. I got to tell you, he's the only thing that he really has going for him that I can like legit look and see. And I'm like, he's a Japanese guy that's really tall.
Yeah.
And hey, that was enough to make Giant Baba one of the greatest wrestlers in the history of the country. So sometimes that's all it takes.
Jake Lee equals Giant Baba. Oh my gosh. Yeah. In the chat, Wit says Sonata versus Goto final.
I've seen some Sonata and Goto matches are okay, but I'm not. Wait, aren't you doing well in the pick'em? How are you gonna say that's the final? You're like number like you're in the top 10.
That's your final.
I hope that's not your final. You're gonna lose.
Oh man. Discord Daddy says Jake Lee's theme goes hard. Discuss.
What? Does it? I didn't hear it.
I mean, I heard it. Thought it was fine. Didn't blow me away.
There's just some things I'm not going to connect with. People like Jake Lee. I don't get it, you know?
Yeah.
Once he has once he procures the stars, maybe I'll change my tune, you know?
Same. Barry Walsh.
You know what part of it is? he's working like Kevin Nash, but he's not as big as Kevin Nash. You know, he's like me, but like in Florida, like I'm doing big boots and choke slams and sidewalk slams, but I'm only 6'2.5".
But
like
in Florida, that's a 7 foot.
In Florida, that's what you got to do. But like, you know, I'm not that big of an imposing guy, and that like that to me, that's what it is. Like Jake Lee's out there, you know. He said, "I meant the battle of the what does it say?
Original gear."
Oh, you know, he's hitting back elbows, and you know, he's doing the big man shit from 1994 that Kevin Nash and Scott Hall used to do. That's how he wrestles.
Yeah. And you know, with his crowd reaction, like there was like a pop for like when the match graphic came on, but then like his entrance came and like there wasn't really like a loud reaction when he was making his entrance. And then Sonata's entrance was like quiet. Like you could hear a pin drop when Sonata was coming out.
I didn't notice that much about the difference with reactions until we'll get to it, but like Gabe Kidd was the one guy where it's like, oh shit. You know, they're in Osaka, right?
Yeah.
They love Gabe Kidd.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Barry Wall says, would Sonata be better off leaving just 5 guys? And would a world tag league of him and Uemura be good for both of them?
How can him and Uemura do a world tag league if he leaves just 5 guys?
They would both have to leave, I guess.
And it's just 3 guys. Are we going to wind up in a situation where it's just Doki? Just one guy?
The guy?
Yeah, the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sonata is. I wouldn't put any effort in like trying to really push him or change him. Like I think the just 5 guy thing is fine for him. I think eventually Uemura is the one that needs to leave and do his own thing, lead his own faction. But I would leave Sonata where he's at for right now.
I think Sonata needs to just like focus on some tag shit because that's where his strength lies.
Yeah,
he's a really good tag team wrestler.
He is. We've said that for years. Moving on to the next matchup here, 7th match of the evening. From the B block, we had Yuya Uemura, the Heat Storm, getting a big win over the IWGP Global Heavyweight Champion, the Rebel David Finlay, in 16 minutes and 23 seconds.
This was good. A surprising finish, but again, it's the first night of the G1, and this is the kind of thing that you do want to see occur here. David Finlay not off to the strongest start, especially being like a white belt titleist. It's kind of interesting because oftentimes, unless there is if someone beats a champion in the tournament, unless there's a follow-up that clues you in that there's going to be a rematch, then it's just they got to win over the champion, but it doesn't necessarily automatically qualify them for that title shot in the future. And spoiler alert, David Finlay's already lost twice in the first couple nights of the tournament, and we've talked about before. Gato likes to do that, have guys come from behind. We saw Jay White that one year; he lost like his first 3 matches in the block and then came back. So it's not that unfounded or unheard of. I thought Uemura looked good here. I don't know if I would necessarily say like my opinion of where he's at right now was changed immensely. I can't say that, but I thought it was a good effort from both guys and a good match, and kind of speaks to what I was saying earlier, where these young guys didn't get to work with the stars last year, and now they're getting to work with veterans and kind of expand their repertoire and their horizon, and that's a good thing. And this was a much needed win for him and added that much more level of excitement to see an established name get beat by an up and comer, which is exciting.
Yeah, I thought this was a really good match. I thought Yuya looked really good. Also, kind of the story of him, he's a guy that's kind of stubborn as far as sticking to his style. He wants to stick to the basics, and he's doing the steamboat, the arm drags and the crossbar and stuff like that. And then Finlay kind of overpowered him towards the middle of the match, had him on the outside, taking him to the guardrail, and it's kind of really, we've seen this with Finlay where he kind of gets like these 80-20 matches where he's just so dominant, he's talking trash and just kind of running over the guy. works over the back, going for, the big power bombs. But then, Yuya eventually comes back with his plancha and crucifix for a near fall. And then towards the end here, Finley nails a nasty set of buckle bombs. But then Yuya comes back. He reverses one of the power bombs into a Hurricane Rana. 1, 2, 3. Gets the big upset victory here. So, yeah, thought both guys worked really hard and looked really good. And I know a lot of people, we'll talk more about it as we talk about Uemura's other match. I feel like a lot of people are starting to kind of change their tune on Uemura a bit. And, I mean, I don't think his work has ever been the problem. Like, he's always been solid in ring. I think there needs to be more something with his character and kind of development there. But good first night for him.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a clean, definitive win, but it was also off of a counter into, a Hurricane Rana 1, 2, 3. So it's not like he jobbed out the guy or anything like that. Like, he caught him, which shows he can beat him, but he didn't hit him with his finish. He didn't lay him out. He didn't lay him lying in the ring. Like, he beat him clean, which is, that's important. It proves that he's capable of doing that, but it also didn't send a message where it's like he is for sure beyond a shadow of a doubt the better man, sort of thing.
Yeah. So then following that, we had Evil defeating the NJPW Strong Openweight Champion War Ready Gabe Kidd in 10 minutes and 21 seconds. And of course, that just being the match time when the bell finally rang. But these guys started off pretty wild and were doing some brawling in the crowd before they got to the ring.
Yeah, I thought that this was pretty excellent. Trying to see if I need to get my dog under the covers. Yeah, I thought this was pretty excellent. I mean, to kind of see Bullet Club guys go at it, but it wasn't the usual shenanigans that we've experienced year over year for the past decade. And Jeremy, you talk about it a bit more while I wrangle this dog, get him settled.
All right. Ramon says babyface legend Gabe Kidd. And yeah, that was definitely very great to hear. It was just the reaction that Gabe Kidd got on this first night in the crowd. Very behind him with Gabe-oo, Gabe-oo, and was really behind him. And, when he was doing the big sprinting chair spot, and Evil threw the chair in his face, crowd booing, and they were really, really behind Gabe Kidd. And yeah, it just kind of makes you see like what we've been saying for a while now. Like, Gabe Kidd, he connects with this audience, and even though he's doing the more gimmicky madman shtick, he does really live up to that spirit of New Japan Pro Wrestling and wanting to defend New Japan. And between all the guys that, the outsiders that were coming in with, Nemeth and Riddle, and then with Moxley as champion, Gabe Kidd's a guy that, stood up for the company in moments like that, even being a heel. And when it comes to, Evil shenanigans, he, kind of standing up for the company against Evil and kind of, saying that, Evil kind of made a joke and a mockery, as being a mockery of the company. So I could definitely see why the crowd's getting behind him when he had such a great reaction.
Yes. And I didn't hear all of that, but I think I probably agree with it. One thing that I've lamented over the years is anytime like Evil is put into a situation where we think maybe he'll have to prove himself and show evidence of the old Evil, he never does. He always finds a way to snake his way out of that and just rest on his shenanigans and his cheating ways. Rambo and Slam picks it out after watching him harangue, what's that word? That weatherman. I'm all on Gabe Kidd, classic pro wrestling vibes. But because of the fact that Gabe Kidd was also Bullet Club and was basically taking the fight to him, this really felt like the first time in probably since 2020 that there was any evidence of the old Evil on display at all in a match. Like, he really did have to kind of go to the well. Oh, harass, he said. He did have to go to the well and show a little bit of what he used to be as Evil. Now that's not to say that he didn't lean into his cheating ways. That did occur, and I thought that the brawling that these guys did on the early part, even before the match started, all throughout the building, was very exciting. I am hoping, because we started to see more of that on the second night with Gabe Kidd again. And I'm like, this was sort of the undoing of your tournament last year. I'm hoping that we get some sort of progression, especially since he's like the strong open weight champion, that we would move past that a bit. But it doesn't look like we are. And it does look like Gabe is going to continue to lean into those antics, which to me, I'm not as negative on them in the same way that other podcasters are. But to me, it's a bit of a cop out. It's like, he's not going to, I would rather him have standout performances than try to just be the wild man who, loses based on, his own hubris. Like that, to me, like we already experienced that last year. I think we should be moved past that a little bit, but it seems like they're going that way again. But it was eye-opening, the reactions that Gabe Kidd got in Osaka. Now Osaka is a different kind of wrestling city than other parts of Japan, so it's not indicative of how everybody's feeling, but they are kind of trendsetters and they're usually ahead of the curve. And the way that people, let's say like a year ago, the way that people pretended that crowds would react about Sonata, but it was just non-existent. That's the way people were actually responding to Gabe Kidd in this situation, where it was like, oh, they love this guy. And like, they've got money with him as a baby face on their hands. That's another thing too. I just wanted to point out, I know we're past that discussion, but when we're talking about ELP, like we tend to, when people talk about like the upside and the downside and blah, 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 what have you, people tend to forget that like Japanese fans fucking love him and he gets incredible reactions in the buildings all the time. And if you look at the reactions that the Japanese fan base had online when the reports were coming out about the fact that he's not re-signed and could hypothetically maybe be on his way out, they were all about, it was all about love and praise and hoping that he stays with the company. So that's another thing to take into consideration. But ultimately, Gabe Kidd took it to Evil, but Evil was able to cheat. He was able to find a way to win and pick up the 1, 2, 3. And then I guess, I don't know, I didn't see it, but I guess he ousted or claimed to have ousted Gabe Kidd from the Bullet Club at the end of the night, even though at this point there are two separate Bullet Clubs, basically. I mean, they're not even really together anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of a joke that it's still considered both Bullet Club. I don't know. They need to clean that up. But yeah, Gabe Kidd was his own undoing here, his own worst enemy. His loss is cool. He pushed referee out of the ring, which allowed Dick Togo to get involved, allow Evil to hit a low blow. They hit the Magic Killer, and then he hit the Everything is Evil 1, 2, 3, gets the pin, crowd boos. So yeah, Gabe Kidd down 2 points, and Evil picking up his first 2 points of the tournament. We had some questions here. What 89 says, I was surprised how popular Gabe Kidd was with the crowd on night one. Why do you think this is? Was this partly because he was wrestling Evil?
Partly, but I think some of the points that you made about him being a vocal defender of the company, even if some of it was done from the perspective of a bad guy and in kayfabe, that's sort of what got CM Punk over in WWE.
Mm-hmm.
People have made the same connection, the anti-hero. I mean, there are strong vibes of Stone Cold Steve Austin there. Maybe he'll never be the cultural phenomenon that guy was, but they have something there. It just hasn't fully fleshed itself out just yet. But
yeah, there's like this mix of like CM Punk, Stone Cold, a little bit of like ROH Kevin Steen and that heel run, Conor McGregor. Like there's like elements of a lot of great guys kind of all mixed in there with him. Yeah.
And it's funny because there's just like, there are very vocal critics about him. And a lot of those critics are the same. Like, let me put it to you this way. people that only care about like say AEW and WWE and Western wrestling, they're not even watching this shit, so they don't care. So the only types of people that are plugged into what's going on in New Japan are actually like diehard wrestling fans. And you would think that those same types of fans who are fanatic about people that are great promos and great performers and people that step out and do things that are different, they're always asking for that. You think that they would go gaga over a guy like Gabe Kidd, but he just doesn't seem like some of those same people just seem to be very bothered by him. And I don't know if it's because they proclaim that he's an edgelord or what it is, but I don't know. I kind of feel like some of them are getting worked, even though they know that they're getting worked or maybe don't want to admit it. Like, I don't know what that is, but I'm like, he's classic pro wrestling and you guys are diehard pro wrestling fans and you claim you want pro wrestling. I don't get what you don't like about the guy. The only thing, my biggest thing is just that the company hasn't gone full in on him. So you can't really invest in him to that level because you could tell that the company hasn't. And so it's hard to go all in on a guy that they're not willing to.
Right. And yeah, I do think part of it, yeah, he wrestling Evil, I think also helped probably too, but all the points we're making, I think that he's a guy that's had great performances. You look at his year, like he's had a really good year. You're going back to like the dog pound cage match and like almost killing Hanare and just some of the,
that wasn't good.
That wasn't good, but his performance in that match besides that was good. And like some of his performances on these New Japan Strong shows, also the Eddie Kingston match, and there's been a lot of like highlight moments he's had this year.
I think the feud with Eddie Kingston, the feud with Kiyomiya, those are things that have really kind of put him over the edge. And I don't know, my camera just lost connection for some freaking reason. And then also, some of the things that the statements that he has made about the perceived, perception of the relationship between AEW and New Japan, it does echo a lot of the sentiments of domestic fans, and I think that resonates.
Yeah. Let's see. Next question here from Discord Daddy. What has been your favorite moments over the first two nights? Mine was Gabe Kidd pulling out the perk angle on Evil and Dick Togo.
What was the perk angle? Because I saw his comment about that, but I wasn't sure what he was referring to specifically.
Like the big dive at the beginning, like Evil and Dick Togo were walking to the ring. He did the big, Kurt Angle did the big like the perk angle spot, like where he did the dive to Abyss.
Did he do the same dive to them?
Well, it was a tope over the top rope. It wasn't off the stage necessarily, but
yeah, he didn't do a somersault dive onto them, right?
From the ring to the floor, but not from the stage.
Oh, he did. So he did do the same somersault.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I don't know, bro. I guess I didn't catch that. I liked when I did like in that match where he did the full-fledged run across the arena and they got smacked with the chair. Like, that's very ECW of them.
Yeah. Barry Wall says, do you think Gabe is that over now, or is the hate for Evil got that strong?
I mean, I don't see why they're mutually exclusive. I think it's a convergence of both those things happening in this match. But there's no denying that like the domestic audience is coming around on Gabe Kidd, and he's a heel and he does a lot to try and stay and be hated, and they still love him. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
He wasn't getting these reactions last year.
Right. And Evil doesn't get these reactions every town they go into. And he's been doing the same thing since 2020.
Right.
So moving on to the semi-main event of the evening from the B block, we had the Alpha Konosuke Takeshita defeating the Gene Blast Yota Tsuji in 17 minutes and 12 seconds.
An awesome match. My favorite match of the tournament so far. Not surprised because it was kind of the one that we had earmarked to be a standout match. But the one thing I was a little bit surprised about, Jeremy, and don't get me wrong, I don't mean to say this in any negative way about Konosuke Takeshita. I mean, if anyone's a listener, I've been nothing but extremely overly complimentary about Takeshita, and I'm a fan. I am. There's no denying that. But I've been seeing a lot of comments about the takeaway that a lot of people have coming out of this match is that Takeshita is head and shoulders above everybody in the company, everybody in the tournament, and he's just that much of a star and that much of a performer. And if he were in the company, he would be like the ace, the top guy and everything. And I'm not denying that there isn't truth to those things, but I didn't see a match where there was one guy that came off as a star, and this was not Bret Hart and 1, 2, 3 Kid. That's not what I saw here. I saw two guys that to me could easily be generational rivals if they were perhaps in the same company. And I didn't think that Yota Tsuji wasn't not on the level with Konosuke Takeshita. I thought that if Takeshita is like a top 10 performer in the world, then Tsuji's just a half, maybe a fraction of a tier below him. He looked like he looked every bit the star of him, every bit the performer of him. Yes, they did have a botch on the top rope. They recovered from it and got off their big spot. But this match was fucking pretty phenomenal. And I didn't think it was a carry job. I thought my takeaway was, damn, these are two of the best wrestlers in the world. And like, this is going to be a hard match to beat for the rest of the tournament. And I want to see them wrestle again.
Yeah, this match rolled. Tsuji coming out here with the gold and red gear. You mentioned everybody getting new gear. Tsuji, I'm sure there was no convincing Tsuji. Like, he probably already had this saved up and ready to bust out. So yeah, the gold gear looked awesome. And yeah, I thought this was an awesome match. I mean, I went 4.5 on this thing, and I thought this was a great back and forth. And just like you, like, there's several questions here about Takeshita, but also I love Takeshita. I thought he was awesome. And you know, this was not like the UJPW 6-man match where like he kind of stood out above those guys.
Right.
Like, this was a peer contemporary that could go toe to toe for him, and like you mentioned, could be a generational rivalry kind of thing. And yeah, I thought the match was awesome, and there was a little bit of like anything you can do, I can do better. Where Takeshita hitting his big flip dive, and then Tsuji following up with his big tornado dive later on in the match. And I mean, big suplexes, big strikes, big knees. They do the Spanish fly spot where they had a little bit of the botch there, but they were able to recover. Takeshita avoiding the Gene Blast with a Poison Rana was nuts. I mean, the action was just, they're just going back and forth, doing crazy stuff. Tsuji hitting the headbutt to the chest, and then the curb stomp for a near fall. Like, there's so much great stuff. And then he goes for the Gene Blast, and Takeshita catches him with a knee, hits the Blue Thunder Bomb, and then a big kind of last ride power bomb to get the win.
Yeah, the back and forth and some of the moves that they kicked out. There was quite a few times where I thought this could have been the finish of the match. And this was a moves match. It was a great story, great athleticism, back and forth. Witt's Collection says, I agree. I thought Tsuji looked just as good as him. And I agree. That's what I felt like watching it. I felt like this was two guys that were on that star level, going toe to toe. And that's not to take anything away from Takeshita. I think he's fucking incredible, but I've seen these dissenting voices who are like, who almost, you almost think that they just hate New Japan and they just want to see them burn. And they're like, Takeshita is so far above everybody. I'm like, I just saw him wrestle a guy on night one that's almost as good as him. Like, what are we talking about here?
Right. He didn't wrestle Chase Owens.
Yeah, like it wasn't like that. Another thing too, and this is weird, and maybe this is a good time to bring it up. I don't know what the fuck's going on with Cage Match lately. I know that they've been changing rules because the toxicity with the AEW and WWE fan base is just crazy. But like, usually I think the New Japan ratings are pretty accurate. Although I've noticed over the past year or so that like the engagement is just so low, it's almost hard to really rely on it. But there've been tons and tons and tons of people rating the G1 matches and shows, which is a good thing. That means that people are excited and engaged and watching. I mean, I've seen, like, for instance, this particular match in general, just to kind of give you an example, has 239 votes. That's not a small number, but the ratings are generally pretty low. Like, this show got a 7.57. I thought it was one of the better shows of the year. Maybe not a show of the year caliber show, but there was no bad matches. Everything was great. And there were some really, really top end matches at the top of the card. This match in particular, 8.31, which is respectable, but it's the only match over the first two nights that got over 8. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on? Like,
Yeah.
is it a reputation thing because people just perceive New Japan as being down, so they're just rating it down? Like, what's the deal? There's a lot of people rating and a lot of people rating low, but the shows are very good. And I feel like we're pretty unbiased. We'll tell you if the show's not good or if the matches weren't good. The matches are really good. In this match in particular, I don't know. I was right there with you. I thought it was a 4.5. I thought this was phenomenal.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes, like on the first couple of nights, people are a little like gun shy. They don't want to, throw too high out there. But I feel like even with that kind of mindset, this was kind of really low for a lot of these matches. Like you mentioned, like on Cage Match, like that's like that. This match is like the only notebook match. But like I'm looking at my ratings, like I have on the first night, I have 2 notebook matches. So this match and the next match we'll talk about in the main event, and some that kind of flirted pretty close, like ELP and Inare, Newman and Umino, all was like 3.75 on those. And then Sabre and Okan, Goto Cobb, Yuya and Finley, and Kid and Evil, like 3.5 on all those. Like,
yep. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not like this show wasn't necessarily that classic night. Like, I don't remember what night it was, but there's that one night in 2014 that's like Chris Sampson's favorite G1 night ever. And it's not like that. Rambo Slam Pick says TK fucked it up at all by mentioning Cage Match. Yeah, that is what fucked up Cage Match. So thanks, TK. And I hate to say it, but that is true. That is what fucked up the site. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought that without there being with there not being a grapple out there, there's nothing to kind of counterbalance this. I'm like, how reliable when it comes to award season, are we gonna be able to look at this shit and even judge it? Like, how are we going to determine shit now? But anyways, the match was great. I think we got some questions though about it, right?
Yeah, Death Triangle 720. Did it feel like Takeshita was right at home in New Japan?
Yeah, he did. Okay, that was something I wanted to mention. Was like, okay, don't get me wrong. WWE, AEW, those are the places. WWE's hot right now. AEW has so much upside and growth potential and everything like that. And there's also negatives, especially with him being a Japanese foreigner. And we've already kind of seen the positives and the negatives about his run in AEW up to this point. And New Japan is not financially set to be in a place where realistically, I believe that they could poach a guy like him. But the one thing that they do kind of have going for them, he can't have this kind of run in AEW or WWE. Like, there is something magical and special about the presentation, the look, the ambiance, and the feel and the booking of New Japan Pro Wrestling that, even if you took this guy and you transported him, you put him in DDT, which he had a match in DDT yesterday. You put him in Noah, and put him in front of the 8K camera and the green mat, and it's not going to match the kind of like prestige and level of work and that camera presentation and everything that like that New Japan has going for it, to where I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, yeah, he'd be a big fish in a small pond, but damn, he'd be a big fish in a pretty large pond. Like, he might want to consider coming over here because he's not going to be able to do what he did with Suji in AEW. Like, and that's not to say they don't have the talent level to do this, but it's just not the same feeling. The feeling's not there when it comes to him in that company. They haven't figured out how to utilize him right. But like, if he comes to New Japan, oh, bro, he would be like a top 4 guy for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is. Yeah, with AEW, it just seems like also they put him in big spots. He's had a lot of great matches, and he's a part of a top faction, but there's just been no falls through. They haven't really committed to say like, oh, we're going to make him a top guy. Like, he beat Kenny Omega twice, and like no title match. Like, no,
they don't know how to use foreign stars.
Yeah.
That is what it is. It's very simple. They don't know how to use foreign stars. The best utilization of a foreign star that speaks another language is probably Okada right now, and that's because they're really, going off his reputation, but also surrounding him with the Bucks and everything like that, putting him in a spotlight. And then they've also kind of given him that gimmick that is doing a lot of the work for him. Mm-hmm. But like, when you look at the other like top like people that speak foreign languages, whether it's Penta, whether it's Phoenix, whether it's Takeshita, or even some of the female wrestlers like Riho and Hikaru Shida. Like there's a glass ceiling. There's only so far that they can take those people. And it's because they don't have the creative to know how to integrate them properly into their product to ingratiate them with their fan base. I mean, they're popular, but they can't make them top guys. They haven't figured out how to bridge that gap. Whereas like obviously in Japan, foreigners don't have that same issue. They can be top stars in the company in a way that, and it's not just an AEW problem. This is across the board. There's really never truly been any foreigners that have gotten to the tip top level in a foreign company. I mean, or in a Western company. I mean, maybe Nakamura winning the Royal Rumble is like the greatest achievement of like a Japanese star in Western wrestling, or like maybe Muta in 1989 running through Jim Crockett is like the best. I don't know.
Yeah. Death Triangle also asked, do you think if Takeshita was in New Japan, once Okada and Ospreay left, he would have been the young guy to be the world champion right now?
Maybe, but it didn't work out that way. He's a DDT guy. Like if he were ever to come over, it'd be now.
Yeah. And
I don't know what the contract situation or his living situation is, but like, I do think there is upside for him to come over and have a run, because I don't think that they're not going to give him upward mobility in AEW at this point. I just don't believe that. I think that he is stagnated at a certain level, but if he were to come back and potentially, like, I would almost liken this, and I know people won't like this analogy, but we're at a point where New Japan's almost like the ECW in 95 to like the WCW and WWF. And a lot of guys went to ECW, revitalized themselves, and then went back. And after having been in the big time, went down, revitalized themselves, and then came back and made more money. And you could point to a quite a few people that did that. I don't see why you couldn't potentially do that if the upside was big enough. And I think for him, it would be.
Yeah. Doc in Discord says Takeshita is levels above everyone in the tournament. Do you think NJPW should offer him a deal so he has 3 active contracts?
I don't know what his contract situation is, but if I was New Japan and I was looking to sign the premier Japanese talent that's out there for men, that's not Okada, yeah, I would do everything in my power to get him.
Yeah. And then a comment here from Barry Walsh says Takeshita is wasted not being a truly top guy in AEW.
I mean, potentially, it just depends. Like, I hate to say he's wasted, but is a North American audience going to connect with him like that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I felt like he was getting some great connections when he was doing the Bayface run and, you know, really trying to build his name. I thought there was a connection there, and then they did the heel turn, and also, you know, he's the most hated guy in the company, Don Callis. And again, you know, he beats Kenny Omega twice, and he's getting all these big wins, and no title match, no follow-up. Like, he's not always on pay-per-view. He's not always in main event programs. Like, it seems like there should have been an easy follow-up from that heel turn in the whole Kenny Omega feud.
He doesn't speak English.
No. Well, that's why he's a Don.
They don't know how to utilize non-English speaking talent. That's the reality of it. And I don't even say that in a derogatory way or like, you know, like, oh, they fucking suck. It's not just a them problem. Nobody's really figured that out in America. Like, that's a very important thing. You got to speak English. You know, if Rey Mysterio never spoke English, he would never have been Rey Mysterio.
Yeah.
You know, if Eddie Guerrero didn't speak English, he'd never been Eddie Guerrero. Like, the top guys who work in a style that's separate also just happen to be good promos and being able to speak domestically.
Yeah, and even with those guys speaking English, like, you know, the accent, like Vince hated the accent on some of the guys like that. So even if they do speak English, like,
and the size and a myriad of other things that were against them, you know, that they had to overcome. But if they didn't speak English, that would have been it. They would have been cooked, you know?
Yeah. Well, speaking of cooked, let's talk about this main event. So
really, I disagree. What do you mean cooked? Who's cooked?
Well, Naito is cooked, but I mean, this was a great match.
Bro, we're looking here. I'll just say it right now. You put out that video the other day that I was very vocal on about, are we going to get G1 performances out of Tetsuya Naito? So far, we're 0 for 2 when it comes to Tetsuya Naito in this tournament. He has turned it up, but
he wrestled Shingo and Zack Sabre Jr.
He did say in that video that the two guys that could get really good performances out of him still at this stage are probably Shingo and Zack, and that's exactly what they did. This is the match I'm most perplexed about. 7.31 on Cage Match. I don't get that at all.
Yeah.
If you told me that your favorite match of the night, even more than Takeshita and Tsuji, was this match, the main event, I wouldn't begrudge you at all. It wasn't mine, but I'm probably right there with you. Like, I think that they were about the same level. This was a phenomenal opener. These guys have a lot of great chemistry. Naito had his fucking working boots on. There was a little bit of sloppiness at the end, but Jeremy, I'm not like some wrestling fans don't like there to be any kind of sloppiness to the work in any regards. I'm not like that. I think sometimes it can add to what's going on, especially like if they play into it the right way. And I didn't think that this wasn't falling apart type of botching the way that like Sonata and Naito did earlier in the year. This was like, we're exhausted and shit's falling apart, but they picked it up and they continue to have like a hard fought battle. And Shingo busted out some of his like moves that he's never done in New Japan before. Like Naito was doing top rope shit. Like this match fucking rocked. I don't know what anyone's talking about. In fact, I might have liked this better than their first match, honestly. I was always a little bit bearish on that match.
I think I like the first match better, but this match was awesome. And so Shingo, he defeats Naito in 23 minutes and 14 seconds. And this was an awesome match. I also went 4.5 on this. And this is a very hard hitting match. Like Naito, there's one point where he slapped the crap out of Shingo. I was like, oh, you done messed up now. And I think the biggest knock on the sloppiness is mainly on the Destino stuff. Like Naito is just having a hard time hitting the Destino, and it's clunky. And I think at this point in his career, he needs to pull a Muto and he needs to change the finish. Like he needs to find something that's easier for him to do. Like switch, go to the Valencia, that snowplow pile driver. Like that's easy for you to do. Like stop maybe the running Destino you can pull off, but like the regular like arm ring Destino, it's clunky, and the guy's like trying to help him get over. Like it looks bad every time.
This is off subject, but my first night back wrestling, probably like a month or so ago. It's been a while. I've been going wrestling for a while back again. I was getting my sea legs under me, and one of my training partners was like, all right, give me a body slam. And I started to do it, and like it felt off. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, are you about to give me like a Northern Lights bomb? And then I was like, what do you mean? They're like, you did it the wrong way. And like I was about to snowplow them. And I was like, I don't know, man. It's been a little while.
Oh man. I think the money clip is now available.
That's true. Yeah, I don't disagree, but it's also sort of like he's made his bed. Like that's the move he does. It's the Destino,
But other guys have changed their finish up.
It's different though. Like they don't change their move because they can't do it physically anymore from a standpoint of like they can't physically actually do it. They changed the move because their body can't handle the impact of the move any longer. This is different. His body can handle the impact. His body just can't get up from an athletic standpoint to actually perform the move properly anymore because it just requires too much athleticism. That's not good. But I don't want to bury the guy too much. Although, like they were on the top rope, they slipped. The guys in the match before them, they also were on the top rope, they slipped. So I don't want to take too much away from all of them. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe he should change it, but it's like, what the fuck's he gonna do at this point?
Do Northern Lights bomb.
I guess. Maybe he should pull Chris Jericho and come, like you said, like the same way how Muto came out with the Shining Wizard. Maybe he should come up with an impact move. But for me, I don't believe Naito as like a strong striker in the first place. So I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, besides that,
He's got bow legs.
The match was great. Naito did that thing where he flips the hip toss and the neck breaker. That was dope. So he's been working the neck over the whole match. He's doing the hangman neck breaker stuff. And Shingo did the Death Valley driver from the top rope for a great near fall, pumping bomber, turning this man inside out. Made in Japan, all the big stuff. Shingo's dropping out him, hits the Noshigami, and they're going back and forth. Really great stuff. And that big slap Naito gave to Shingo. Naito busted out the capo kick. Haven't seen that in a while from him. That forward rolling kick. And yeah, great stuff here. Shingo, he hits the last of the dragon to get the clean pin here. 1, 2, 3. Then he got on the mic and said that Naito won their last meeting, but this time Shingo won. He said they need to have a rubber match. He put the LIJ fist bump in the air. And he kind of said, who's going to win this tournament? And then he said, time, Shingo time. And yeah, Shingo ending night 1 here, 2 points. Big win over the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. And there is a big show in September in Kobe. You got to think rubber match. Naito defends against Shingo in September.
Depending on how things shake out. But I mean, Kobe World, that's a big show that they do every year annually for Dragon Gate. And, obviously Shingo's got an extensive history at that venue in that town. So, potentially.
Yeah. I had a question here from Kashabe. What do you think about how Naito's looked these past few months? I'll admit I've only been an NJPW fan for the past few months, but I've gone back and watched a few of Naito's best matches, and he looks like a shell of himself now. Do you think maybe he drops the title before Wrestle Kingdom?
No, I don't think he's going to drop the title before Wrestle Kingdom. Regardless of what kind of shape he's in or shape he comes into that show, being, he's still the top star in the company, and he's got to be at the top of the marquee with all the stars that they've lost over the past year. The main match at Wrestle Kingdom has to involve Naito, and he's the champion right now. So there's nobody between now and then that he's dropping that belt to, unless it was John Cena maybe, or Dwayne The Rock Johnson could probably beat him for the title. Who else do you think could what are those are the two names I could think of right off the top of the bat. Dwayne The Rock Johnson could definitely beat him and win the title. So could John Cena, but I'm not thinking of any other names that are out there that could actually viably beat him and headline Wrestle Kingdom and go into the dome with the title.
What about the tribal chief?
Maybe, but he's just too unrealistic. He's more unrealistic than those two guys. Maybe Goldberg. Maybe Brock Lesnar.
I would say Brock.
That's about it, I can't think of anyone else. Hulk Hogan. Maybe.
Barry Wall,
self-proclaimed racist Hulk Hogan.
Barry Wall says, what was your match of the night? Talking about night 1.
For me, it was the semi-main event.
Yeah, I mean, I'm back and forth between the semi-main and main. Went 4.5 on both of those. Those are the two standout matches for me from night 1. Rainbow Slam Pig says, I noticed a certain wrestler with a bad case of boo-boo face on night 1. What are your favorite or most remembered cases of a wrestler coming out with a severe boo-boo face? And I think he's specifically talking about the Roughneck here.
You're going to have to answer that. I'll jump in a minute, but I didn't notice any.
I think probably one of the best boo faces is Jonathan Gresham when he was getting ready to drop the ROH title on that first second Tony Khan AW pay-per-view. He didn't come out with his gear, didn't come up with the octopus thing, just came out and just dropped the belt real quick. It was the opening match where he dropped it to Claudio.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't really think of too many off the top of my head. I mean, you always hear the people always talk about how Sasha is famous for that.
Yeah.
Every time she's like going to drop the title, she comes out and she's got the sourpuss face on. So I didn't pay attention to too many people's entrances during this show, though. So I didn't notice anybody that was too upset.
Yeah, looked like Shooter had a little bit of the boo boo face on night one. Rambo's
job to do.
Rambo says, night one was, in my opinion, one of the most top to bottom excellent shows New Japan has put on in a long time. Are we so back?
I wouldn't say we're so back, but I mean, this is a great step in the right direction. And it was full of excitement and quality wrestling and exactly what you want out of a G1. Was this like a blowaway G1 show? No, but it also didn't have, there's certain problems from a pacing standpoint that I've had with some of the Super Junior all tournament match shows that this show just seemed to be exempt from. It didn't have those same kind of problems. Like part of that's probably because it's the opening night in front of a big audience and everything like that, the energy, the variety, but this was awesome. It was a great show.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to night 2, July 21st, also in the same building, Edion Arena, Osaka. This time we had an attendance of 2,545, so a little bit of a smaller crowd, down from night 1 on a Sunday here, but still combined total higher than what they did last year, opening weekend in Sapporo, and still really good compared to what they did in Osaka last year.
They did like 2,500, you said?
2,545 was the number here.
Still out drying dynamite.
So the show opened up. We had Sonata defeat.
Just gotta move everybody to the hard cam. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm just playing. That's not true.
We had Sonata defeating Callum Newman, 8 minutes and 41 seconds.
Yeah, so Sonata needed to get the win back. He's used to being fucking Anakin Skywalker beating up on all the little Padawans. He did that last year in the tournament. So, he got the green boy here and picked up the 1, 2, 3 with a sly little roll up.
No, didn't he beat him with the deadfall?
Oh shit, that's right. He did hit him with the deadfall.
Yeah.
He used a counter to hit him into that deadfall coming out of I think he countered the Oz Cutter into a deadfall, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he went for the Oz Cutter. Yeah, caught him, hit the deadfall, 1, 2, 3. So fine.
I like the finish a lot.
Yeah, finish was good. Fine opening match here. I mean, it was, just sub 9 minutes. Good stuff. It accomplished what it needed to. Sonata rebound, got a win. Callum still look good. And we had a question here from Craigie D. Do you think Newman's performance in the tournament should shoot him into leader status of UE, or at least maybe begin a build towards this?
I mean, he's on a good path.
Yeah, I mean, I could easily see him taking over from TJP. So we'll see.
Is TJP even the leader?
Well, Gray O'Connell was trying to shut the faction down.
Yeah. I feel like, let me ask you this. If the Bullet Club right now is like when the Black and White reunited and then there was Bullet Club. I know there was the B Club was like Hollywood, right?
Right. Yeah. There was NWO Hollywood.
And what was the other one? Was it just Wolfpack?
Yeah. So yeah, during the feud, it was at NWO Hollywood's Black
after the feud, after they reunited.
Oh yeah. I think they were still Wolfpack, I think.
Okay. And then like, what would Evil be? Is he like Stevie Ray at this point?
I think so.
Do you think like Gato's pulling the different members of the House of Torture aside and he's like, you're the real leader of the House of Torture?
Probably. So moving on to the next match, we had Hanare defeating Oleg Boltin 8 minutes and 5 seconds.
Really good action, and I dare to say that of the two very short, hard hitting style matches between night 1 and night 2, I preferred Hanare and Oleg Boltin over Jeff Cobb and Hiroki Goto. Both really good, but I thought this was a little bit better. Maybe the best Oleg Boltin match to date. I'm sure he'll have better matches than this in the future, but I thought these guys' styles meshed very well with one another, and it's exactly what I want to see out of Oleg Boltin. And again, like I said earlier, Hinare off to a great start. I feel like they're really trying their best because we've seen in years past where like the never champion has just kind of been booked like a joke in these tournaments. And they seem to be adding a bit of prestige to him and giving him some meaningful victories.
Yeah, I thought Bolton looked really good here, and I think Hinare is a perfect opponent for him. Very hard-hitting stuff here, and Bolton was doing, the big splash that he does. He did a Vader bomb, and he was going for the kamikaze. I think that's been one interesting story. It seems like a lot of wrestlers have the gut wrench and a lot of his big moves kind of scouted now, so he's having a hard time doing the gut wrench stuff, the kamikaze. He was able only to do like 2 gut wrenches here and before he get through Hinare. And then he hit the kamikaze, but Hinare kicked out at the 7-minute mark. Then Hinare tried to do the Ultima. Oleg escaped, and then Hinare did a running headbutt, and then the Streets of Rage to get the pin over Bolton. And yeah, the never openweight champ, 2-0. And we had a question here from Def Triangle 720. Of the 2 nights, who performed the best in your opinion between Newman and Oleg?
I would have to say Newman just because he had better matches and he's performing at a higher level, but he also is more progressed than Oleg Bolton. I feel like I've seen more actual progression from Oleg Bolton in these 2 nights versus what his work had been prior to the tournament already.
Right, like we talked about it last week. Like Newman's already the more of established guy, and so he's performing kind of like I expect him to do. And then Oleg is really progressing, kind of showing more to his game. So yeah, they're both doing really well. Next matchup here, third match of the evening, we had War Ready Gabe Kidd defeating the Great Okan to get his first 2 points in 12 minutes and 1 second.
Yeah, kind of echo some of the similar sentiments about both of their matches from the night prior. I don't think we had the same groundswell of support for Gabe Kidd here that we had on night 1 necessarily. So maybe there is something to him being opposite of Evil. But also take into consideration Okan is pretty popular in his own right. But both of these 2 guys had a lot of brawling on the outside for their first matches on night 1, and that trend kind of continued here on night 2. I did think that some of the spots they did on the outside were a little bit contrived, especially with Gabe getting his arms trapped, and that just kind of seemed it's a little prolonged. But overall, the match was fine, and Gabe proved that the strong openweight title is stronger than the King of Pro Wrestling openweight provisional championship. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, nice hard-hitting matchup here. Gabe Kidd caught him with a nice rebound, like lariat, to get the pin here. So good for Gabe to get his first 2 points here. But kind of like we mentioned earlier, hopefully going forward, not every Gabe match is this wild, crazy brawl, and we can just have him do more stuff in the ring.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan in Japanese pro wrestling for guys to not only win just off of roll-ups or submissions or their signature moves, but I like sometimes when someone just gets hit with a big impact move like a lariat and they just lose. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's prevalent in a lot of other Japanese wrestling, but has been a little bit lacking in New Japan over the last few years and needs to be brought back to a greater extent. And I feel like Gabe is sort of bringing that element to New Japan as well, which is nice.
Yeah. So next up, we had Ren Narita defeating El Phantasmo, 14 minutes and 16 seconds.
T-shirt Narita again. He's got new gear. He's wearing the tights, not the trunks.
Yeah, he's got long boys.
He's got the long boys on, but he's still wearing a T-shirt on top of it. So just kind of leaning into the grime, I guess. And again, ELP working very hard, looking good, but losing due to the distraction and the ongoing saga of his, quest for self-actualization, trying to figure out who he is and where he fits in this company, and allowed for an opening at the end of the match to allow for, Ren Narita to cheat and pick up the victory here.
Yeah, the big thing was Narita making fun of ELP and Hikaleo. He did this standing high five to himself, which really got ELP fired up, and ELP grabbed the push-up bar, and he was going to hit him with it, and then Jado was like, no, don't do it. You're going to get disqualified, and then Dorito was able to take advantage there, hit the double cross spike, his version of the X Factor. 1, 2, 3, gets the pin over Phantasmo. So we're kind of seeing like the story kind of play out, and he's getting closer to, getting an edge back, and just little moments like this, he's kind of letting that the emotion of the Hikaleo stuff throw him off his game.
Yeah, and the thing too about it is very rarely do you see anybody just lose, and then just get ousted. Like usually if they're going on an early losing streak, that is a key indicator that they're on their way to a rebound,
Mm-hmm.
I think if ELP wins his next match, might actually be a bad sign for him from a kayfabe or like from a booking perspective, because then it's like, oh, he lost 2, 1-1, then he loses the next one, then it's like it's a little uneven. But if he loses 3 straight, then you're like, oh, he's got to come back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that might be that fits more the MO of like Gato's booking pattern. So that would be more of a vote of faith than him to win his next match. So I expect him to lose the third one, and then that be the key indicator. Like, all right, they're bringing him back after this. Like,
yeah,
they're not turning him into Juice Robinson in 2019.
Yeah. So moving on from that, from the A block, we had Evil defeating Jake Lee in 11 minutes and 20 seconds.
Worst match of the tournament?
Yeah, this was pretty bad.
Yeah. It did have some stuff going for it, but it did fall apart towards the end and is another not great. Just from like the whole Bullet Club shit and everything like that, just not necessarily like a great volume in the annals of, we should be really excited for Jake Lee. We already know what the deal is with Evil, but it's just, I don't know. They didn't mesh well. Like it just didn't come together. I don't know what the fuck happened there. I actually was kind of optimistic after the first night that I thought that they might be able to do something here, but yeah, they were like kind of bumbling and falling apart.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of miscommunication, and I don't know. This is not digging this match, and Jake Lee's trying to do the whole Eddie Guerrero spot where he's pretending like he got choked by the garrote wire and the ref almost DQ. I don't know. The whole thing didn't work for me, and the whole like, oh, we're supposed to be in the same faction thing, throw him too sweet. And also Jake Lee's supposed to be the smart bastard, and he couldn't outsmart Evil and Dick Togo. So how smart is he?
Yeah, and he took a powder to the face to boot, circa 1980s style. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Following that, we had Heatstorm Yuya Uemura defeating Hiroki Goto in 12 minutes and 38 seconds.
I thought the action here was pretty good, and I really liked the finish. Goto they've done a lot of this in this tournament where one guy is getting a lot of the shine and looking good, and that's almost kind of the giveaway that the other guy is going to get the win. That's kind of what I felt like the story was here was, basically Goto getting a lot of. Why are you laughing,
Dan? Not smart.
What do you say? Oh, not smart. I didn't see that. But yeah, I felt like Goto was getting most of the offense and almost put him away quite a few times down the tail stretch. But ultimately, like, Uemura was able to withstand the storm and got him in the bridging double under. What is his move called?
Yeah, deadbolt.
The deadbolt, which is a
double overhook suplex.
Double overhook bridging suplex, and got the 1, 2, 3, which I love that suplex. And yeah, I'm glad he hasn't done it in a while. I feel like where he did that more in his Young Lion days. So, and it was always a really, really effective finish. So I'm kind of almost glad he's, utilizing that again.
Yeah, that was a nice, very hard hitting match. Uemura was doing those like the double chop kind of combo, like the one after the other, kind of same time thing, and he was really laying into Goto's chest. Goto's chest was really red towards the end of the match. And yeah, and again, Goto with another very hard-hitting match here. And I kind of like Uemura kind of leaning into more of the hard-hitting stuff here. I thought he did pretty well, kind of mixing that in along with kind of the traditional stuff that he does as well. Then you mentioned towards the end there, hitting the deadbolt suplex to get the big win. Had a few questions here. Death Triangle 720 says, how do you feel about Uemura performances so far in G1? Seems like he's found some fire in his first 2 matches.
I think they've done a good job with the booking to make him look viable again. The work itself isn't bad. You know, the biggest comparison point I can really point to just based on his style of work would be like Ricky Steamboat. But the offense he does isn't that different from a crispness level and from a proficiency level. But I think what's really different between his style of work and Ricky's is what Ricky does on when he's selling. Ricky is an all-time incredible babyface in peril where like you live and die with him because he's just one of the greatest wrestlers when it comes to his facial reactions and his body, like his selling. Like he's so over emotive, like, you know, like theatrical, like, and, you know, choking and turning purple and shit like that. And that's a lot of the stuff that like, I don't think Uemura is like as great at that stuff, you know, and that if you're going to do almost like a bare bones level of classic work, then you almost have to become like a classic worker. You know, you need to do some Terry Funk type shit. And I feel like that's, or like Ric Flair or like Rick Steamboat. And that's sort of what's missing. But yeah, he did show some fire here. He got a big win. They've given him 2 wins in a row. So it's going well.
Yeah, I thought he's been looking really good. Again, like we said, never an issue with his in-ring work. It's just, you know, like you mentioned, he's that connection of like the selling to really connect to the crowd and really to buy into him more and kind of live and die with what he's doing in the ring. But yeah, he's been good so far, and yeah, 2 solid matches to start the tournament. Rambones asks, after 2 nights, what are your feelings on Uemura? And reveal to see him turning up the intensity, hitting more high-impact moves, and looking for more like the prospect we were also invested in.
I won't repeat points that we've already made because we've talked about him extensively here, but I would like to see him add some more wrinkles to the game. Maybe, you know, up the intensity, up the level of impact moves, you know, just bring something a little different.
Yeah, same. And Stale Burger Bun says, is it time to go all in on the Heat Storm?
I'm not totally there with you yet.
I think it's that you can monitor him. Like monitor the storm.
I think that this tournament has been really good for rehabbing these young guys. And the reality is only one guy can win the tournament. That's it. You know, a lot of people can get over in defeat in the tournament and have great stories and great trajectories and be elevated without winning the tournament. So like, I think he's going to have a great tournament and the outcome will be very good provided the booking's correct. But you know, I can't say I'm going to go all in because I don't think he's winning the shit. I don't even think he's going to be a finalist. If he's a finalist, I'd be kind of not necessarily angry, but I'd be shocked.
Yeah. Let's move on to the 7th match of the night from the A block. Roughneck Shota Umino makes a comeback, defeats the Dragon Shingo Takagi 18 minutes and 22 seconds.
This match was interesting because in some ways it reminded me of the match that Shingo had against Uemura in North America. I don't remember where that show was. I think it was in California, but I don't know if you recall where I was like, Shingo just fucking ate Uemura alive and like never gave him anything. That's kind of what happened here. Like Umino was underneath. And like, yeah, he'd have some hope spots, but he just got his ass beat by Shingo, like the whole match. And then he toughed it out and found a way to hit the what's the fucking double underhook?
The Death Rider.
I don't know the names of moves, bro. I don't even know if I should have a podcast. But yeah, he hit the Death Rider for the 1, 2, 3. And the finish was really great, very exciting. But like this was his real man match. Like he was getting young boyed by Shingo almost the whole match. I mean, Shingo was fucking him up bad.
Yeah, Shingo did that big snap suplex into the corner. He had a big superplex to him, you know, on the injured hip, and big lariat, the sliding lariat to sentons. Yeah, he was walking the dog with Umino in this match. But Umino did have some spotlights here. He had a second rope exploder from the top, his tornado DDT. He had a great spot where he kind of caught him in that, like that. I don't know what to call it, but like where he hooks them, kind of like Death Rider. He catches them and then he drops them on their head with a DDT kind of thing. But yeah, lots of great stuff here. Towards the end, he hit an exploder, half Nelson. He hits the Beyblade for an air fall. Shingo comes back with a headbutt, but then he cuts him with the Death Rider. 1, 2, 3. Great big win here for Umino, and a lot of people questioning his booking position and whether he's cooked or not, whether has heat with the office, but gets a big win over the guy that beat Naito the previous night.
Yeah, important win. You have to imagine with Shingo getting a win over Naito. I'm not saying Shingo's going to do phenomenal in the block, but you think he's going to be booked pretty strong, and him having that win over Naito is probably potentially some sort of tiebreaker. So anybody that has a win over Shingo that's an important win. So this was a big one for Umino, because I mean, he lost to Callum Newman on night 1. And yeah, it's not a great look optically to have, an up and coming debutee beat him in the first night, but for a fact Callum Newman's not going to be a factor down the stretch. So yeah, the points loss hurts, but it's not going to really be a meaningful tiebreaker. But again, Shingo, that's a big one.
Yeah. And we had a question here from @Halos_Flosion on Twitter. Thoughts on the people saying Shota is washed?
We've already talked quite a bit about it. The only thing I'll say is hasty. The guy is coming off of allegedly pretty legitimate injuries. I don't know how extensive they were or weren't based on the reports, because I based on the stuff that they were saying, and maybe they're true, but like if everything they said as far as like the severity of his injuries was true, I don't even know how the fuck he's in the G1 right now based on the timetable. Then again, I'm not a medical expert, so what do I know? But how much of a great shape is he supposed to be in based off of coming off of injuries?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think he's washed at all. I just think the look just needs to improve. He needs to go back to the Tanahashi cosplayer, change something up, grow his hair out. I don't think it's just the look.
I think it's also be fucking awesome. Needs to improve.
Yeah. He needs more great matches.
He just needs a fucking rule,
So move on to the semi-main event. We had Zack Sabre Jr. defeating Tetsuya Naito in 16 minutes and 30 seconds.
Again, Naito doesn't always gel well with everybody, and for that matter, neither does Zack Sabre Jr., but these two guys have wrestled each other so many times over the years. They've kind of gotten into a certain flow and a certain level of rapport with one another, and they just have that chemistry. This is another match. Again, I don't get it. 112 votes, 7.20. I don't know, man. I was like around the 4, maybe over 4.25-ish type of range. I thought I wouldn't go as far as to say like the best match of their feud, but a notable entry. They've had a lot of really great matches, and this one was up there. And I felt foolish about the things that I've said about Naito over the past few weeks, because he was awesome here. And so was Zach and the crowd. And I loved the finish. Like Zach got him into that bridging. And actually this is why I messed up in the first, because Zach wore orange and so did Sonata. and I was thinking of someone in orange doing the backwards bridge. And I know Sonata always does that. So that's why I said Sonata did the bridge in the beginning. But it was really Zach. Zach hit the bridging cradle and almost got the 3. Like it was like pretty much 3, but like they bust out, and then a few seconds later they went to it again. And I'm like, did they botch that, or is that just the plan? Like hit him with it again. Either way, it worked for me. I liked it a lot. And Naito had some really great near falls. I don't know, man. I thought this match ruled. And then post-match, the crowd was going crazy. Zach grabs the world title. He goes up into the
that man grabbed the belt real quick.
It looked awesome. And like, now granted, him beating Naito, I don't know how bullish I am on the idea that he's going to be the guy that faces him in the Dome. I'm a little bit hesitant about that with him getting such a strong victory here. But then again, you can do a VTR with this guy holding his belt up in the bleachers. That is a visual that it could easily be put into a VTR. So I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, this was a great match. And again, I know, we were kind of questioning Naito and what he's going to look like, but this was the real test comes this week because he got a layup this week. Gato's like, all right, opening weekend.
Put him in there with the two strongest workers in the block.
You got Shingo, you got Saber. You're gonna look real good, when most people tune in. But then the dog days, when he's gonna face Sonata.
He's got Evil coming up this week.
He's got Evil this week. He's got Sonata this week. Like we're gonna find out real quick what Naito's really looking like this week. But yeah, this match was awesome. The opening sequence where these guys are just going back and forth, exchanging near falls, and also that's a big story in their rivalry. Where a lot of times, like Naito will catch Zack, even though Zack's supposed to be the technical expert, and so they kind of play off that history, and then lots of great stuff. Naito really working on the neck, the Hangman's neckbreaker to Zack on the outside, and going for the Destino. There was a great Destino into a Zack driver counter near the 14-minute mark. And then, like you mentioned, the finish there, they're trading roll-ups. Then Zack finally just catches him, grabs the belt, goes in the crowd, celebrating. So another thing like we predicted, Naito starting off 0-2 and the underdog story for...
That's almost like lazy booking at this point, though. Like, how many times is this going to happen in the G1 where this guy... Like, I don't know, man. Have him win, He's champion.
Right. Death Triangle 720, kind of, that's a question that you touched on a little bit. Just with Zack beating Naito in the G1, do you think his chances of winning at the Dome decrease?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think his chances of just winning this tournament decreases. I know a lot of people, a lot of the betting sites and a lot of the fans and SupportProWrestling.com entries. A lot of people are very high on Zack winning this thing, but I've been saying from day one, like,
Jeremy.
This man's in the block. This man's in the block with Naito. I have a hard time seeing him win the tournament and going back to the Dome with him being in there in the same block as Naito. So
see, you guys only know one side of Jeremy. It's a very prim and proper and very, humble man. But he takes his pot shots when he needs to, when he's ready to, to get that jab. And he's like, I've been saying for a while now.
I'm just like, because everybody's like, oh no, yeah, Zack's winning, it's fine. I'm like, no, he's in the same block as Naito. There's a possibility they're going to wrestle again in the semifinals. Like, you're not going to do that a third time in the Tokyo Dome. I don't know.
Here's the only way it works. And it's what I've been saying from day one. Zack is number one in the block. Naito comes in number 2 or number 3 and loses in the semifinal, or loses in the whatever you want to call it, the quarterfinal, and never faces Zack again. And then Zack wins the whole tournament. That's the only way it happens.
Yeah.
If they end up facing each other again in any scenario at the end of the block, then Naito's probably beating him, and they're probably not going to do a return match. And I can't imagine how it would be good booking in any, like, if he did beat Naito and then won the tournament, like, I guess the best you could hope for is maybe if he were to beat Naito twice, then Zack's going to lose the tournament, and then Zack will maybe face him at the Copper Box and then not win the title.
Yeah.
Which could happen, because that's classic Gato booking.
Definitely, yeah. So that brings us to the main event from the B block. Gene Blast, Yota Tsuji gets a win over the IWGP Global Heavyweight Champion, David Finlay, in 19 minutes and 50 seconds.
So this match was good. Don't get me wrong, but it's an uneven good match. And I feel that kind of way about David Finlay most of the time. There are some times where Finlay is, and I don't want to say he's never plugged in, because when I'm watching his work, he is proficient, almost in a kind of similar way to like, and some people won't even see this as a disrespectful comment, but like kind of like Randy Orton, you know? Like it's hard to watch Randy Orton and say Randy Orton's not good or proficient. Like he's very good, but I'm also very rarely like bought into like, you know, where it's breaking my
belief,
my suspension of belief, where I'm like, yeah, I really believe in what this guy is doing. A lot of the style of work that Finley does, it's hard for me to buy into him being this bad guy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Then again, we did see him in where do we see him? We saw him in Chicago, and I was like, "What's up, Dave?" And he just walked past it and didn't say shit, and I was like, "Dick." Maybe he is like that in real life, but it's hard for me to buy into him as being this bruiser, badass dude, and he puts on that front, and I mean, all more power to him. But the work is good, but I also find it hard to connect with the character in the work.
Yeah,
but
I'm getting a little over like the 80-20 thing. Like, I have a heart. Like, he's not Bolton Oleg with this big like bodybuilder. He's not like a Tomohiro, like some kind of like hard hitting. He's not Shingo. You know, I don't buy him as this like big bruiser bully that he's going like 80-20 against everybody. And like a guy like Tsuji, who's like a hefty guy. Like, if you want to do like Finley like bullying like Callum Newman, fine. But like him like bullying a guy like Yota Tsuji, who's like this big, thick guy, it just sometimes it just doesn't come off, I don't know, as believable.
But you know, like, okay, it's weird because sometimes I'm an advocate for like wrestling's a work. You don't need to hurt each other. I mean, that's how I am when I'm in the ring anyways. Like if someone hits me, I'm like, what the fuck you hit me for? It's a work. But then at the same time, when I'm like, all right, this guy's supposed to be the leader, he's supposed to be this like, you know, bruiser, and he's got this pedigree of whatever, then why doesn't he lean into the style of hard hitting work that his dad did? You know, his dad was an undersized guy, but you believed in him because he fucking hit people. And I could think of several people in you know, the past 30, 40 years of wrestling, like, you know, Chris Benoit was like that. Kevin Sullivan was like that. Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer. Guys that were kind of undersized, didn't necessarily have the greatest look, but you believed them because they hit fucking hard and they seemed crazy. And like, he kind of has a nice face. Like just like he seems like a dude you'd go to like a brewery with and like kick back and hang out with and maybe play some, you know, a cornhole, like that kind of guy, you know, like he's a dude. But there needs to be something there. Now, when I say it's uneven, like the work was good, I didn't necessarily buy into it, but then the finish of the match kicked up to another gear and it got really, really fucking good. So I'm like, okay, there is something here. There always is something. Like, you know, Finley is kind of underrated all at the same time. And then, you know, Tsuji had another standout performance. I think right now he's my MVP of the tournament so far, just based on his body of work. And yeah, they had some really, really great back and forth and near falls and the classic big match New Japan style of finish that you like to see on a big match like this. And seeing Tsuji hit him with that, you know, top rope drop kick double stomp to the back of the head for the 1, 2, 3 was awesome. And sent the fans off happy, you know, got revenge over his loss to him earlier in the calendar year and kind of showed everybody why he's, you know, a real star. And even despite holding the white belt, like, I don't know, Dave Finley's not Tsuji, you know?
Yeah, and it seems like a story of this tournament for Tsuji. He's having a hard time hitting the Gene Blast, and so he went for it here towards the end, but Finley caught him with the Into Oblivion neck breaker for a near fall, and then he's doing the release power bombs to Tsuji, which is pretty impressive for a guy that size, and he hits all those power bombs, and then he's just drilling Tsuji with all these like discus forearms, and then Tsuji finally fires back. He does hit the Gene Blast, but he wasn't able to get the pin off of it until he goes to the top, hits the Marlowe Crash, that double stomp from the top, 1, 2, 3. Tsuji gets his first 2 points of the tournament, gets on the mic. He made fun of Finley because during the press conference, Finley didn't want to eat the Marlowe pudding. So he, you know, talked about, you know, Finley not eating the pudding. and he wants to be the first person to win both the New Japan Cup and G1 Climax in the same year.
Yeah.
So there we have it. The first night G1 had a couple questions here. Death Triangle 720. Depending on how Gabe and Finley's performances are by the end of the tournament, do you think they will have a story between Gabe and Finley?
Maybe. I don't know. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess depending on who ends up with more points, maybe there could be some kind of situation where Gabe is more stepping up to Finley, but we'll see what happens.
The only thing they've ever pointed to is the one time he told Gabe to shut up because he was talking. Mm-hmm. And who knows if that was a shoot or it could have just been real. Shut the fuck up.
Trying to cut my promo, man.
Yeah, bro, like you're stepping over my shit. But and maybe that is going to lead to something someday. And a lot of people will probably look smart, but as of now, I don't necessarily think that's where it's leading to.
Yeah. Then Doc in Discord says, is the Marlowe Crash one of the stupidest and coolest move names after flan pudding ever?
I don't know of any other, so
it's up there.
Yeah, it's gotta be the best.
Les Commission 7252 has a few questions here. It says, on commentary, Walker and Chris bring up good points that this tournament is about the veterans trying to set back the younger generation and the younger generation trying to prove a point that not only to the veterans, but as well as their own peers, that they are ready to take the top spot of the food chain. Do you guys think that this is the main story of this year's G1?
I do, because last year they introduced a lot of young guys, but they kept them so separate from a majority of the roster to where it was business as usual almost across the board. And it was a transitionary period, but like most of those top stars have left, and now you're kind of left with veterans and young stars, and there is no true definitive ace, and everyone is gunning for those open spots that were left behind by Ibushi and Ospreay and Kenny and Jay and Okada and Tanahashi diminishing, and like there's open spots now, but we're waiting to see who fills it. And is it going to be guys like Zack Sabre Jr. or like an ELP or a Goto, or is it going to be one of the Reiwa guys?
Yeah. I definitely think that that's a main story here. And I think it all goes back to Tanahashi's, thing about wanting to get young guys in big spots. And yeah, I think you're going to see this kind of power struggle happening with the young guys kind of taking over the veteran guys.
I got to grab the brass ring.
Yeah. He also asks, is Gabe Kidd and Yota Tsuji the most popular guys out of their blocks right now due to the fan reactions on the first two nights?
Hard to say, but I mean, that's the perception you would see on the screen. It doesn't mean it is, but yeah.
Yeah. He says, were you guys surprised that both main champions in Naito and Finley went 0-2 on the first two nights?
Clearly they're setting up redemption stories for both of the top two champions and giving, some younger guys some deserving wins.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more surprised than Finley, I thought, because, he hasn't really defended the title yet. And they want to probably keep him looking strong, that maybe he would have had at least one win so far. But clearly, they're going to set up a kind of comeback arc for him. And also with Naito, we talked about it. No surprise. It's, Gato booking 101. Naito loses the first three matches in the G1, then comes back. So
I hope the new TNA World Champion Dolph Ziggler comes back and challenges, fucking Finley at the end of the tournament so we can get the rubber match.
Pull a Young Bucks, don't do the tournament, and make a challenge.
Yeah.
And then his last question, he said, I think that Gabe Kidd versus Evil was the better match in the main event right behind Tsuji and Takeshita on night one. It should have gotten a better match score on Cage Match. Do you guys agree?
I do not agree that it was the better match than the main event on night one. I do agree it probably should have got a better Cage Match score, but I kind of felt that way about almost all the scores across the board. I was a little shocked, honestly, how low everything was.
So was I. Like when I first checked Cage Match, it was like 9-10 votes on matches. Like on that day, I'm like, okay, some early people were low, and then like I checked next. I don't know. Then I checked the next day, and then it was like hundreds of votes, and like it was still low. I was like,
yeah, bro, like, are there hundreds of people watching the G1 in North America right now? Like, maybe there are, but are they all in cage match? That seems sus, doesn't it?
I don't know. I feel
It's
like
not 2019.
I feel like big New Japan shows normally get tons of ratings.
I don't know, bro. I'm a little sketched out on this, you know?
Man, TK been telling us the bots out there. Zach Porter says thoughts on this year's G1 theme. Hard to beat 2019 shine by low IQ.
Bro, I turned on the opener for the first night and I was like, oh, this is really good. And then it kept going and kept going and kept going and kept going. And I was like, all right, bro, let's just fuck. I just skip through it. It's like, it's almost like 9 minutes long. I was like, this is too long an opener. And I don't remember any of the themes from any of the years. So,
I mean, I
think there's one about being a survivor.
Yeah. I think they mentioned that line in this song too, but I like the song. It was high energy, but like for the first night, like I watched the whole thing, and then second night I was like, all right, like you mentioned, like it's too long. Like let's get to the match.
Way too long.
Like bell ring. Like, come on, let's get to it.
Well, I'm gonna go through the block standings here. So in the A block, you got Zack Sabre Jr., Evil, both tied for number 1 with 4 points, 2 wins each. Jake Lee, Callum Newman, Shingo Takagi, Gabe Kidd, and Sonata and Shota Umino all tied with 2 points. And then at the bottom of the block, Tetsuya Naito and Great Okan with 0 points. In the B block, sitting at number 1, you've got Yuya Uemura and Hinare tied with 2 points. Dan Coffin, it's no Max the Max. Yeah, I think that's the one that I liked.
You got a Max the Max.
Inosuke Takeshita and Jeff Cobb both sitting at 2 points each. They have not faced each other because they didn't wrestle on this second night. Konosuke Takeshita was actually doing a work in DDT, and they will be facing off against each other in B block action on night 3. But they are tied currently with Oleg Boltin and Ren Narita and Yota Tsuji all at 2 points. The difference is Takeshita and Jeff Cobb have only had 1 match, and Oleg Boltin, Ren Narita, and Tsuji have all lost a singles match, but they're all tied at 2 points. And then at the bottom of the block, ELP, Hiroki Goto, and David Finlay all sitting at 0 points after 2 nights. And then this coming up week, we've got several nights. We've got night 3, night 4, night 5, night 6, night 7, all before we get back to next week's Keeping It Strong Style. So, Jeremy, I don't know. I'm thinking, do you want to just kind of discuss the tournament matches probably on the rundowns?
Yeah, I'm going to do that.
And then maybe we could just talk about, I don't want to talk about them. I don't even think we really, do you want to do predictions? I'm not going to do predictions.
We don't have to.
But I'll probably mention the match that I'm most excited for, and if there's anything that's notable, I suppose. Yeah. So, night 3, July 23rd, Hiroshima Sun Plaza. In B block action, you got Konosuke Takeshita and Jeff Cobb. Following that, it's all A block matches as Zack Sabre Jr. takes on Callum Newman. That's an all British affair. That should be interesting. Shingo Takagi versus the Great Okan. Gabe Kidd versus Shota Umino. That's a grudge match if I've ever seen one. The semifinal match of the night, Sonata versus Evil, tagged, LIJ explodes. And then your main event, you've got Naito and Jake Lee for the millionth time.
Yeah, not looking forward to that main event. I think Gabe Kidd and Umino have the potential to be the show stealer on this night. Along with Konosuke and Cobb, I know it's the opening of those matches, but I feel like that could be really good as well.
Yeah, this could really turn out to be a good night. There are a lot of positives, but I think just from a pure heat plus excitement, Gabe Kidd and Shota Umino is the match to look out for on that night.
Yeah, the semi-main and main are going to drag this show down.
And then, okay, I thought you were going to go. So night 4, we got July 25th, Sunmes Kagawa. We have B block action as Hiroki Goto takes on Oleg Boltin. Jeff Cobb takes on Ren Narita. ELP versus Yota Tsuji. David Finlay versus Hinare. And then Takeshita versus Uemura. Yeah,
I think the main event, Takeshita and Uemura is probably going to be match of the night here. There's history going back to that UJPW match, and I feel like Uemura is really trying to prove himself in this tournament. So this could be the breakout moment, I think, for Uemura in this tournament.
That's one definitely to take note of. I think this card looks really good top to bottom, but for me, ELP versus Yota Tsuji is going to be a standout match. They had an incredible match during the New Japan Cup. I can't wait to see them run it back. And I am thinking that Yota Tsuji is going to give ELP a third loss. The only thing is he's on a losing streak, and so is David Finlay. And then in the A block, so is, like Naito. Like, how many losing streaks are we really going to go on? But I feel like Tsuji should be ELP, and then ELP maybe rebounds from there.
Yeah, I can see that happening. I could see Finlay beating Hinare to kind of break the streak.
I don't think the Never champion should be beating the global champion, most likely.
Yeah.
So, but that's the match I'm most excited for. On night 5, July 27th, from Dejima Messe Nagasaki. One thing I just wanted to point out. On these undercards, Hinare and Takeshita are teaming up, which I thought was kind of just an interesting thing that's sort of who they paired Takeshita up with on these shows.
Yeah, that's why people are asking, like, do you think Takeshita is like somehow going to be involved, like United Empire, or like is this like a Don Callis connection, like the favorite?
I hadn't even thought of that. Interesting. But maybe that is why it's happening. Yeah. So opening A block match of the night, Shingo versus Callum Newman, followed by Sonata versus Gabe Kidd. Third match of the night, Okan versus Shota Umino. Semi-main event, Zack Sabre Jr. versus Jake Lee. And then your main event of the evening, Tetsuya Naito versus Evil. So we're getting into some of that, some of the stuff we talked about with A block that might not be so hot.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the thing I'm most excited for is probably Shingo and Callum Newman.
Same. Yeah, but it's also the opener, so it's not going to be like a blow-away match, but it's intriguing.
Yeah. But also, too, it's only a 5-match card, so they might get a little bit more time.
That's true. Yeah. But we'll see where that goes. And then night 6 from Fukuoka Convention Center on July 28th, we have all B block matches. El Phantasmo versus Oleg Boltin. So see, he's going to turn around and pick up the win there. Mm-hmm. Jeff Cobb versus Yuya Uemura. Konosuke Takeshita versus Hinare. David Finlay versus Ren Narita. And then your main event, Hiroki Goto versus Yota Tsuji.
I mean, Konosuke Hinare pops out right away.
And they've been teaming together, so maybe there will be like a tease of uneasiness between the two of them leading to this match. But like, that's gonna be hard hitting as shit. That's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, and then I think Goto and Tsuji, we saw that already this year in New Japan Cup final. I think Goto's gonna maybe get some revenge here.
The rematch, yeah, that's gonna be exciting. And then July 29th, Fukuoka Convention Center, we've got all A block action as Evil takes on Callum Newman. Jake Lee versus Great Okan, Zack Sabre Jr. versus Shota Umino, Shingo Takagi versus Gabe Kidd, and then your main event, Tetsuya Naito versus Sonata for the third time this year.
Yeah. I think Shingo and Gabe Kidd probably, maybe that or Sabre and Umino. Those are probably going to be the top 2 matches.
Shingo and Gabe always has the potential to be really great, but I'm always a little bit lower on it than other people are, but this might be different than the other ones I'm hoping. Mm-hmm. We'll see. But I think Zack and Shota Umino could really be interesting. So, and you think Sonata probably beats Naito just because the title's not on the line and all that? Well, can Naito afford to lose to Sonata?
Yeah. So hold on. So night 3, he's probably. Do you think he's
probably Evil, right?
Well, he has Jake Lee on night 3, so he's probably going to lose to Jake Lee since he beat Jake Lee earlier. So that's 0-3. So he has to win everything else after that, right?
He might beat Jake Lee.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't do a pick him.
So, I mean, I can see him losing to Jake Lee, then he comes back, he beats Evil on night 5, then he beats Sonata here on night 7.
Yeah, so then just Sonata gets sunned 3 times in a row and just established like, yo, you are not on Naito's level whatsoever.
Right.
All right, well, that's what we got coming up. Let's jump into the news. So G1 Climax 34 press conference saw the announcement of the restructured IWGP committee, which oversees the tournaments and championship matches in NJPW. Hiroshi Tanahashi introduced members of the committee that are committed to fully to wrestlers and officials and the operation of championship matches and tournaments in NJPW. The IWGP committee is comprised of former IWGP IWGP Heavyweight Champion Yuji Nagata, multiple-time IWGP Junior Champion Jushin Thunder Liger, longtime referee Tiger Hattori, NJPW Chairman Naoki Sugabayashi, NJPW Representative Director Hitoshi Matsumoto, and Tanahashi further explained that there was no committee president, but rather that as a group, members will attend various events and be on hand whenever required for decisions in the future. So it sounds like a pretty legit group to me.
Yeah.
I guess the bit that we've been doing for the last, 6 or 7 years about, the NJP committee not being real is done. So that's kaput. NJPW also announced on Monday that Desperado would be taking a leave of absence to undergo surgery to repair a medical meniscus injury that has affected him for the past 6 months. There was a DDT wrestler Peter Pan event where El Desperado defeated Chris Brooks in a no DQ match. I saw some photos of that. I saw that ELP or El Desperado did get unmasked and was a bloody mess and kind of looked pretty badass, and people are raving about that match. So yeah, looked pretty cool. And that's going to do it for the news.
Yep. So got a bunch of questions that we weren't able to get to last week. So we'll run through those.
And we're not doing it this week. Let's move on.
Reddit user, I can fall upstairs. Is there any real reason that NJPW doesn't seem to make much effort to acquire other Japanese talent? They are by far the biggest pro wrestling org in the country and should, in theory, have the deepest pockets, yet they don't make serious plays at guys that are obvious stars in other promotions, especially with all the big talent losses over the last few years. Any Western promotion would have looked at guys like Miyahara and Kiyomiya and seen money. I understand culturally it's different there, but is that the only reason it's not done?
There's a lot of reasons it's not done, but yeah, culturally, it's pretty taboo, honestly. I mean, there is a there's a culture of loyalty where, and it comes from like basically, very similar to like karate and like sumo culture, where you come up in a gym, you're indebted to that company and to that gym, and if you stick with that company, you have a job for life. And poaching is not really like a prevalent practice. Now, of course, there's probably people listening and they could point to, like Stan Hansen jumping in the 80s or Brody, or, even some more recent guys that have come from other companies, like, that have history with other companies like Ishii or Taichi or, Shingo
or Taiji Ishimori was
Ishimori. Yeah. These things do happen, but it's not exercise and practiced across the board. A lot of these guys aren't willing to jump necessarily just because the money is better. Like there is a strong loyalty to the companies that they work for and that they've come up through. And, the right storm of elements has to kind of combine and be present for a defection or a jump to even take place. And that's why you see it so rarely in Japanese wrestling. It's a big deal when it happens. So it's not a case. And then also, like, New Japan is in theory working with all of these companies, in this new UJPW sort of conglomerate thing. So what would that look like? I mean, we've already experienced what that looks like when AEW does it to New Japan. But, the purpose of those groups coming together is really more for altruistic purposes, for like charity and to kind of get exemptions from the government funding and things like that. And it's not a means for them to poach all the smaller companies and take their best talent and kill the scene. And that's why. And there's other things too, like political things that we're not all privy to. I mean, there's a good reason why, fuck, what's his name? Who's the dude that's he was All Japan champion. He was doing the Inoki gimmick. Now he's champion.
What's his face? Not Kano, the other guy, Nakajima.
Yeah, like, there's people out there like, Suzuki, Nakajima, and there's reasons that they're not working for New Japan, even though they could, because they're freelancers, So it's not just as simple as they're the big fish. They could just poach everybody. It's never been that way.
Yeah, and also too, the yen is down. Even though they are the biggest company, like this company is still trying to recoup and get to where they were pre-pandemic level, and that doesn't. So in that situation, and again, I guess you could argue that they spent money on Mercedes and Ziegler and Riddle, and so maybe they could use some of that money to potentially make an offer. But again, culturally, for them, they're probably going to do that to try and bring in a foreigner versus shaking things up and going after domestic talent. Def Triangle 720, do you think New Japan's goal should be to have the young guys be stars only in Japan or on a more global scale?
I feel like one goes along with the other, Mm-hmm. This is a domestic company, mind you, but they also broadcast globally to the world. So if you're a big star in Japan, vis-a-vis, you should also be a big star abroad because you're a top star in New Japan. New Japan's an international company as well as serving a domestic market.
Yeah. This was supposed to be a question to Chris. Is what do you think is the young gen is missing to get to that next level?
Why would that only be a question for Chris Samsa and not us?
I don't know.
That's weird. Well, Chris isn't here, so got to move on.
He says, do you think if another timeline, if New Japan had Kaito or Takeshita, New Japan would still be seen as a top company pushing those proven main eventers?
New Japan is still a top company. I mean, just because they're not the number 2 doesn't mean that they're not a top company. I don't know. That I feel like that's a weird perspective on things. Is it not?
Yeah, and I don't know. It's kind of hard to say, like, how would Kaito or Takeshita really affect their business? How would they be used?
I mean, when did they come over? Did they come over in a decade ago, or they just come over, post-pandemic? Like, what's the time frame we're talking about here? And what's to have prevented them from also being stars that were elevated pre-pandemic and then poached post-pandemic?
Right. Yeah. Next question here from our friends over at the Super J Cast. Request for Young Boy to give his thoughts on House of the Dragon. If you want an NJPW related question, then give us a few Hot D character cross NJPW wrestler parallels, but most likely just talk about Hot D, please.
I'm not good at like the whole this person is this person sort of thing. Like, even like when I watch with my friends, they're always like, you're this person and I'm this person. I'm like, fuck off. But yeah, if you guys, I don't know, I love House of the Dragon. And the funny thing about it is like a lot of my friends and even, my girlfriend and everything, we watch it. And like a lot of the people I know have a lot greater perspective and they've read the books. They kind of know the lore, they know the histories. And so they know what's going to happen. And I don't. I go in blind and they're always like, what do you think is going to happen? I'm like, I don't know. It already happened. It already happened for you because you've read the book. So you know what the fuck's going to happen. So I don't want to sit here and like try and be like, I think this is what's going to happen. And obviously like it'd be like me speculating about booking that how am I going to, call out booking for something that I'm not intimately familiar with. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I love House of the Dragon. It's fucking awesome. I think it's better than Game of Thrones so far in terms of just pure quality across the board. I did think it was kind of out of pocket. Like there's been a lot of sex scenes. Been a lot of sex scenes in the history of Game of Thrones, but they did a full-on fellatio scene where I was like, the fuck, bro? I know it's HBO, but like that's a little much, don't you think? Like, but I don't know. I love the show. Like, I'm a little bit over. I guess this is spoiler territory. I'm a little bit over Daemon Targaryen being in Harrenhal getting spooked. Like it was cool at first, but it's been going on for kind of a long time now. I'm also an action guy. So like some of the battles have happened off screen. I would have liked to maybe see that have actually happened on screen, but the dragon battles are scary as shit and also awesome. You didn't get to see too much of that in Game of Thrones, and like seeing that actually play out here is pretty cool. And then it's a prequel, so I don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but I know certain things definitely aren't going to happen because you kind of know the history of Westeros. So you already know, like, for instance, like the Rhaenyra Targaryen's tried to become queen, but there's never been a queen. By the time Game of Thrones happens, there's never been a queen in Westeros. So, she's not going to fucking win. But it's really interesting to see how we're going to get to where we're going with it. And they've only got 2 more episodes. Like, I think it's the best show on television right now. And I watched some pretty good. I watched The Boys this year. I watched The Bear season 3. Those were all really good. But this is the best show that's out there. For real, for real. I wish I had like more in-depth perspective. I'll tell you what I do like. And I'll give a couple shout outs. I like In Deep Geek and Alt Shift X. Those are 2 channels on YouTube that do recaps, and they do deep dives into the history of the lore of these and other geekdom sort of shits. And like they break down the episodes to a level where you're like, oh, there's a lot of stuff going on here that, like, if you're a fan of like history, and if you listen, some of you listening, if you liked Bray Wyatt and the lore, this is the shit for you, because this is real lore. That's real in depth. That's really good. But yeah, I can't wait to see. I'm hoping Daemon and Aemon Targaryen have like a fucking epic battle on their dragons. Like, that's what I'm waiting for.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't watched the House of Dragon or Game of Thrones. Don't have HBO, so.
Bro, get HBO. What are you doing?
Well, I'll get Max if AW stuff's going on there. So.
Yeah, I wish I felt bad. Karen Peterson, friend of the show, who's been on here many times, she had a podcast last year. Like, she's a big fan. And last year she had a podcast about Game of Thrones, but she's chosen not to, or about House of the Dragon. And I just assumed she's watching season 2. And I sent her like a kind of spoiler-esque like meme. And she's like, the fuck does that mean? She's like, I'm not watching it. And I was like, oh shit.
delete.
Yeah, I was like, I figured you were.
Oh, man.
She's like, I'm gonna watch it later. And I was like, fuck.
Just ignore that.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a really, 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 really interesting show. I wish I had more like in-depth like things to say, but I like those creators. They got good stuff. I watch them every week. Also, Screen Crush, I think, is another one. This guy, he's with him and his dog. I think they do a good job too.
Nice. Next question here from @DragonMasterAd on Twitter. With the rise of the younger generation in Noah and AJPW with Kaito and Anzai as their champs, do you think NJPW could be feeling the pressure and have Naito lose the title before Wrestle Kingdom?
No. You know why? Those companies don't got a dome to fill.
Yeah. I love that, because, a lot of these other companies are like pushing younger guys and are seeming to quote unquote like be hotter than New Japan, that people are like automatically being like, oh, well, New Japan's feeling the pressure. Like, these companies are not making as much money as New Japan, and New Japan
not drawing as much as New Japan either.
Right. New Japan's still a top company in the whole country.
Bro, I was in well, you're in the same group. I was in a New Japan group in Facebook, and like sometimes I see really good posts, but sometimes I'm sorry, I hate to bury it, but I see some stupid ass posts. Like, but I let them have their fun. I don't try to rain on the parade. I'm just like, you guys do you. You're doing your thing. That's cool. But there was one post where I don't remember who it was, so I'm not like trying to call anybody out, but they mentioned, and they had a good point. They were accurate in what they were saying. They were saying that like right now, Noah's been seeming to have good shows. I know a lot of people have been very high on like the Monday Magic stuff that they did, and the production obviously is a lot better than New Japan has been. I don't think creatively it is. I still like the way New Japan shoots everything. I think they shoot wrestling the best, but the technology and like media presentation is better in Noah, obviously. And they were talking about like how Noah's like the number 2 company in the country. And I was like, bro, they're not. Like, they're not. If you just go by pure numbers, look at the Google trends look at the business they're doing, and like they're maybe number 4. They're fighting. They're below New Japan and Stardom and Marigold. And Marigold just started. And Marigold's the result of a split from Stardom. And those two companies are above them. And they're fighting out for the number 4 spot in the country with like Dragon Gate and All Japan. And a little bit DDT, but DDT's kind of DDT's realistically below all those companies. But like for the number 2 men's group in the country, it's like those 3 groups are kind of fighting it out. And like I know in the West, I've talked to people before, they don't have this perception because Noah does a good job of getting their product in the hands of foreigners via Wrestle Universe. And the presentation is done so well. And they also have English and everything like that. And they have recognizable names. People think that they're like number 2, but they're just not. And that's not a hater thing. Like I do like Noah from when I watch it and stuff. And they've got a great history and great matches and everything. But just from like a pure numbers perspective, they're like number 4 in the country.
Yeah. And so, yeah. So, I mean,
behind women's groups.
Right. And so I don't think that New Japan feels any pressure at all. I think also they know for their business and for the future, yeah, they need to push younger guys. But like we mentioned earlier, they have a Tokyo Dome to fill up on January 4th, and they also got to fill up January 5th with Wrestle Dynasty. So I think Naito will be the champion going into the Tokyo Dome. Next question here from @Will Pro Wrestling. With President Tana being the company man, do you think the chance of a Gaijin talent winning in the main event of the Dome be possible?
It's happened very rarely.
Yeah. And I'm sure he's alluding to Zach potentially winning G1 and being the Dome. And I mean, I guess it could happen, but
I'm trying to think. I think one time I did a search on dome show winners that were non-domestic but foreign stars, and it was like Hogan for sure.
Bob Sapp, right?
Maybe Bob Sapp. I don't know if he was actually winning in main events or not. I can't, maybe Vader, but I don't know. I don't think so. You know, most of the big stars from like the 70s and the 80s that could have potentially like Stan Hansen and Andre and stuff like that. They were wrestling in an era where the Dome didn't exist yet, because the Dome was constructed in like 89, I think. I'm pretty sure. And All Japan didn't really run the Tokyo Dome until very late in their run, and Noah ran it sparingly. It has been run by some of the shoot style groups in the mid 90s, but I don't know if they ever had any foreigners actually win in the Dome. It's pretty rare for a foreigner to even main event the Dome. I think maybe Scott Norton might have won in the Dome. But like Hulk Hogan's probably, for better or for worse, the most prevalent winning foreign wrestler when it comes to the Tokyo Dome. And most of them weren't even for New Japan. I know he won some of those matches in Super World of Sport, and then the All Japan, New Japan, WWF Summit. And I know he beat Masahiro Chono in the 2000s, but I think that was probably a semi-main event. So yeah, I don't know how many foreigners. Kenny Omega never won in the Dome, right?
No, he lost to Tanahashi and Okada, right? Those are his two Dome main events.
Yeah. I mean, he beat Jericho, but that was on the semi-main event. They called it the double main event, but it wasn't really the main event.
Yeah, and he beat Ospreay. What was that, 2 years ago now? Last year?
Did Ospreay ever win in the Dome?
No, Ospreay lost to Okada, like twice now? 2-3 times in the Dome?
Did Jay White win in the Tokyo Dome?
Jay White Not in the main event. He beat Okada in that 14-minute match, and then he lost to Ibushi.
He never won a main event in the Dome, did he?
No.
It's rare. But we are living in some pretty unprecedented times right now, so you just never know. Like, actually, since we're on the subject, I wasn't even going to bring this up. I was actually going to kind of save this until later, just in case things panned out a particular way. But this just, I got curious. You know me, I just get curious on shit. So I compiled, and this is not the exhaustive list, but it is a notable list of foreign wrestlers that have competed in not just the G1, but all New Japan's major heavyweight round robin tournaments going back to 1974. So I'll give you a list of all those notable names. There's over 50 of them. I'll go quick. I'll tell you the people that were like even just being a finalist in a tournament at all was a big deal. And I'll tell you those people that finaled. There weren't that many. And then I'll tell you the people that won those tournaments, which there's only 3. So here's a list. You got Invader 1, Stan Stasiak, Killer Karl Krupp, who was a 2-time finalist but never won, Super Destroyer, Pedro Morales, who was a finalist one time, Butcher Vachon, Johnny Powers, Nikolai Volkov, Larry Zbyszko, Dusty Rhodes, Stan Hansen, who finaled 3 times in a row but never won, Sergeant Slaughter, Tony Atlas, Don Morocco, Chavo Guerrero, the Iron Sheik, Otto Vons, Ken Patera, Adrian Adonis, El Canek, the Masked Superstar, who did final one year, Jimmy Snuka, Big John Studd, Dick Murdoch, who finaled, Scott Hall, Steve Williams, Big Van Vader, Bam Bam Bigelow, Steve Austin, Arn Anderson, Barry Windham, Rick Rude, who was a finalist, Lord Steven Regal, Ric Flair, Scott Norton, Giant Bernard, Prince Devitt, Carl Anderson, who somehow was a finalist, Lance Archer, Davey Boy Smith Jr., MVP, Shelton Benjamin, Michael Elgin, AJ Styles, La Sombra, Roosh, Lance Archer, Zack Sabre Jr., Jay White, who finaled one time, John Moxley, Jeff Cobb, Will Ospreay, who was a finalist, Jonah Rock, Eddie Kingston, ELP, David Finlay. That's like an extensive list of stars. This is the reason I did this, was to show how many big names have competed in these tournaments that were foreigners and how few of them ever made it to a final. And then the only ones who ever won were Hulk Hogan, who was a 1-time finalist and a 1-time winner, Kenny Omega, who was a 2-time finalist, but only a 1-time winner, and Andre the Giant, who was a 3-time finalist and a 2-time winner. He's the only foreigner that won 2 of these tournaments. And that was all him, and Hogan was pre G1. The only G1 winner that's a foreigner that's ever won that tournament is Kenny Omega. Yeah, it's rarefied air.
Yeah, it's like super, super like, yeah. So if Zach wins, like that's gonna be huge for him.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So out of 50 years now, there hasn't been 50 tournaments, but there have been 50. There's been a couple years where there weren't tournaments, but from 1974 to 2024, there's about 50 years of major men's singles round robin tournaments in New Japan. And out of all those tournaments, a foreigner's only headlined or finaled 18 times. And they've only won it 4 times between 3 guys. And they were, Kenny Omega, Andre the Giant, and Hulk Hogan, 3 of the biggest foreign stars ever in the history of Japanese professional wrestling. So like, if Zach did win, it would be, I think that we're in a time frame where he could, like, the elements are there, but also it'd be so fucking hard for him. Like, that's rarefied air, bro.
Yeah.
That's a who's. That's a lot of world champions, a lot of Hall of Famers, a lot of big names, guys that never made it to a finals, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Ric Flair, Big Van Vader, Otto Vons,
Yeah, like Vader, not Vader. That seems like so crazy.
Stan Hansen,
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Last question here from General Liss Motakata. How do you think politics will play out?
We don't talk about politics on this show. There's been a lot of things going on in the political world. You don't want to hear my opinions on, trust me.
So how do you think politics will play out when NJPW's Ryohei Oiwa takes on NXT's Josh Briggs in Noah's N1?
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't know why specifically though, Oiwa and Briggs.
Because New Japan is partnered with AEW and it's NXT, it's WWE. Although, I mean, it's not like WWE contracted talent haven't worked in New Japan in the recent past. I mean, we saw that with Carl Anderson and stuff like that. So they'll probably do business, but I wouldn't be surprised if some funny shit popped up, like someone gets sick, can't make the date,
or Josh Briggs just chokeslam this man.
I can't stand Josh Briggs. Did everyone forget that he was like sexting like little 12-year-old girls, or like is that just me?
Everybody forgot. Got swept under the rug.
Yeah.
Well,
cool.
That is it for the question. Recommended match of the week. So 2 weeks ago, we recommended Zack Sabre Jr. versus Hechicero.
Oh, did we?
Yeah. Did you watch it?
Okay. No. You watch it?
I did, but I mean, at this point, like it was fresh. Like last week, I did like write down a bunch of stuff about it. I mean, it was a great match. Like technically, like I don't know, like there was something about it that just didn't. Like, I know people are like, I think Dave went 5 on it, and people are like, it's match of the year, and like, I don't know, it didn't hit me like that. Like,
that's because you don't like wrestling.
I don't know. Maybe I need to watch it again, but I the day I watched it, I was like, all right, yeah, this is great, but I don't know. I'm not.
I'll watch it. I'll watch it this week. I'll do it. What was the Global Glory? I don't know what that is.
That was from AEW 2 weeks ago. It was Ishii, Pac, Claudio, and blanking on who the fourth person was. But yeah, it was a really good match.
Shit was mid?
No, it was great. Especially the closing sequence. Pac got the
win. It was really good?
Yeah. Pac got.
Do you think it should be a match of the year contender?
I don't know if it'll make the Excursion match of the year, but it's definitely, I think, a fun watch.
Well, should I check it out?
Sure.
I'm very behind on AEW. Like I heard last week's show was weird because like I didn't hear many great things about it. Then I heard bad things about it, and then everyone was like the show was great. So I don't know who to fucking believe.
Well,
like Dave said that Kenny Omega and Will MJF and Will Ospreay is one of the greatest TV matches in the history of television. I'm like, was it? I don't know. I didn't hear that kind of buzz about it when it happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very polarizing, divisive match. The 59-59 match with the MJF getting the win literally last second. I mean, I thought it was a great match. I went 4.5 on it, and a lot of people were like, oh, I couldn't tell. They were going an hour, they worked at a good pay, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't know. I could tell pretty early. Like, the opening match was pretty fast. It was fast paced, and then they kind of slowed down, and they were outside for a long time, and they weren't counting them out. And they were like,
all right, let me ask you this, Jeremy. What was better, that or Shawn versus Cena from London?
I'm a Shawn guy. That's the match.
Versus Cena from London's pretty great.
Yeah, that's the match where Shawn won, right?
Yeah, it's the one where he catches him like late in the match. They almost go Broadway. It's real, bro. I watched that a couple of years ago, and I was like, this shit holds up. This is good.
Oh man, yeah. During that time period, I really hated John Cena, and of course, I've always been a Shawn Michaels guy. So yeah.
Oh man, somebody hit us up in the on I know we're at the limit for the show. Dynamite, or what's Dan saying there? I can't see.
He says Dynamite's been good for several weeks now. If you ignore the Acclaimed.
Gotcha. Somebody tagged us. I'm not great with the technology. Someone tagged us on like what's it called?
Twitter.
Twitter.
X.
Yeah, they said they got a Shawn Michaels podcast coming out. I didn't know what the deal with that shit was. You know?
I think that's one of the longtime Social Suplex listeners.
Okay.
Let's see.
If they're listening, don't be offended. I don't really know anyone's name or remember anybody.
Ryan Evans.
That sounds familiar.
So
I wish I
guess he's doing a Shawn Michaels Legacy podcast.
I'll know him better if he's on the legacy tier of our Patreon. No, but yeah, I mean, if he said he's talking about early WWF and AWA Shawn. You know, I'm a AWA Shawn guy. I love him and versus the Playboy Buddy Rose and
yeah,
you know, Doug Summers.
Yeah,
love that shit.
Well, so are we gonna hold on recommended match during G1?
Yeah. Oh, we'll figure it out. We'll see how I feel. We got 5 shows to review.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, let's pump the brakes on the recommended match for right now. So yeah, that's going to be it for the show. Next week we'll be back to review nights 3 through 7 and cover all this news. Remember, if you want to watch our show live or listen without ads and get bonus audio, sign up at patreon.com/KI Strong Style. And you can also make a donation by visiting socialsuplex.com/donate and click on the donate button under the Keeping It Strong Style logo. Make sure you connect with us on social media. On X, follow us at KI Strong Style, at Social Suplex, at Jeremy L. Donovan. On Facebook, follow us at facebook.com/Social Suplex and the Wrestling Squared Circle Facebook group. On Reddit, I'm the Pro Black Guy, just Keeping It Strong Style. On YouTube, we are at Social Suplex. Join our Social Suplex Discord server to interact with us and other wrestling fans. You can email me, Jeremy at socialsuplex.com, and check out all the other shows here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. One Nation Radio with Rich Latta and James Boyd. All Things Elite with Floyd Johnson Jr. and Austin Sumowitz. Imp's WWE Adventure with The Implications, Matthew Mayer. Wrestling Art with Chris Slings. Tunnel Talk with Allie and Leah, and the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review, and we will catch you next week on Keeping It Strong Style, the ace of podcasts.
It's your bum.
Thank you for listening to Keepin' It Strong Style. We'll see you next time.